Chapter 36-35. Taoist Dongwang. We can't stay here for long. Take me away from here, Zhuowen said to Dongwang Tai with a pale face. He had used up too much energy. His divine telekinesis could sense that the commotion below the mountain range was getting bigger and bigger. The entire mountain range was about to be affected. Dongwang Tai also noticed the commotion below the mountain range. He took out his flying divine artifact and helped Zhuowen onto the deck. Then he flew out of the mountain range. Not long after the two of them left, an earth-shattering sound came from the mountain range. Then the huge mountain range exploded with a loud bang. Streaks of blazing purple light swept out like waves. Everything in their path was turned into nothingness. Damn, what terrifying energy! Dongwang Tai looked at the flattened mountain range in shock. Without hesitation, he increased his speed and quickly distanced himself from the mountain range. Dongwang Tai only reacted when he was far enough away. His back was already drenched in cold sweat. Although his cultivation had reached the 5th blight, he was already standing at the peak of this universe. However, the terrifying explosion just now had already surpassed his level. If he was enveloped by the explosion, he would have been blasted into nothingness. At this moment, Zhuowen had already taken out a chaos gem and was quickly absorbing the chaos energy. After consuming an entire chaos gem, Zhuowen's face became slightly rosier. His body had finally recovered a portion of the shattered divine power. Lord Zhuo, what's going on? Why is there such a terrifying explosion? Dongwang Tai came to Zhuowen's side and looked at the mountain range that was enveloped in the explosion with a puzzled expression. His heart was cold. I'm not very sure either, Zhuowen shook his head. He was still confused. He did not know why the primordial chaos tree had suddenly emerged with that mysterious purple energy. Was it to blow up the mountain range? Zhuowen felt that things were not that simple. Lord Zhuo, did your trip go smoothly? Dongwang Tai rubbed his hands and looked at Zhuowen hopefully. Zhuowen had promised him that if he could find the primordial providence in the mountain range, he would definitely have a share. Seeing Dongwang Tai's obvious hint, Zhuowen smiled bitterly in his heart. He did intend to bring a portion of the primordial providence to Dongwang Tai. However, things did not go as he wished. He could not bring the primordial providence with him as it was absorbed by the groove. And the groove had mutated. He could only escape in a sorry state. Zhuowen sighed softly and told Dongwang Tai everything that had happened in the sealed grounds. Dongwang Tai's face. After all, you did your best. After all, you've done your best. You. Zhuowen looked apologetic. He took out a divine pill and gave it to Dongwang Tai. The moment Dongwang Tai took the primordial providence pill, his right hand trembled and his shoulders sank as if he was carrying something heavy. He was shocked because the primordial providence pill's medicinal power almost made him lose his grip on it. What kind of powerful medicinal strength was this? Lord Zhuo, is this a heaven-breaking divine pill? Dongwang Tai thought of something and stared at Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded. This pill is called the 7-Life Energy Recovery Pill. It's a first-order heaven-breaking divine pill. Its main effect is recovery. It also has a small healing effect. Dongwang Tai was so excited that he almost fell down. He looked at the primordial providence pill in his hand with a burning gaze. It was actually a heaven-breaking divine pill. This was the first time he had seen a divine pill of this level. No wonder it had such terrifying medicinal power. Take this pill as my compensation to you. However, this primordial providence pill is of a much higher grade than yours. I suggest you mix this pill with a large amount of clear water and dilute it into a medicinal liquid. Then, take a small drop when you're injured or exhausted. Zhuowen reminded him. The 7-Life Energy Recovery Pill's medicinal power was too terrifying. Even Zhuowen might explode and die if he took it directly. After all, this primordial providence pill was mainly for heaven-breaking realm cultivators. Its medicinal power was not something a cultivator could bear. Thank you, Lord Zhuo. I understand. Dongwang Tai was overjoyed. He took out a jade box from his spirit ring and carefully put the primordial providence pill into the jade box. Boom! Suddenly, an extremely terrifying explosion came from the mountain range in the distance. Then, the explosion slowly dissipated. Huh? Lord Zhua, look over there. There seems to be a path. Dong Wang Tai looked at the location of the explosion with a surprised expression and couldn't help but ask. Zhuowen stood up and looked at the mountain range. After the explosion in the distance dissipated, the huge mountain range was no longer there. In its place was a purple path that led to the depths of the chaotic starry sky. This path slanted upwards, and there were neat steps on the path. Could it be the primordial path? Zhuowen's pupils constricted. He looked at the seemingly endless path, and his entire body trembled with excitement. He had heard about the primordial path from Su Yuan and knew that it was the bridge between the lower realm and the 100 territories outside the realm. Any cultivator who succeeded in breaking through the heavens in the lower realm basically followed the primordial path and entered the 100 territories outside the realm. Moreover, he also knew why there was no primordial path in the starry sky. The most important reason was that the starry sky was too young. Until now, there had not been a single heaven-breaking realm cultivator. They were unable to mobilize the primordial providence and the power left behind by the primordial tree in this starry sky to form the primordial path. Isn't it said that the primordial path will only appear in the starry sky where a heaven-breaking realm cultivator has appeared? Why did the primordial path appear in the starry sky in advance? Zhuowen frowned, but he was puzzled. However, he was very clear about one thing. The appearance of the primordial path might be related to him absorbing the primordial providence. Lord Zhuo, what are you doing? That path that suddenly appeared has an unknown origin. It's best if we don't get close. Dong Wang Tai couldn't help but loudly dissuade Zhuowen when he saw him on the deck suddenly jump out and rush toward the purple path in the distance. Zhuowen ignored Dong Wang Tai's call. His gaze was blazing. He knew that with the primordial path, he could enter the 100 territories outside the realm in advance. Back then, he had planned to use the golden coffin to drift to the 100 territories outside the realm. Now that he thought about it, this idea was too laughable. The chaotic starry sky was too large, far larger than the primordial tree and the 100 territories outside the realm. Chapter 36. Zhuowen landed at the starting point of the primordial path. At the starting point, there was a flat purple road. The road was 100 meters wide and emitted a blazing purple light and an inexplicably powerful pressure. Zhuowen frowned. He did not know why, but he felt a trace of danger on the road. Let's try stepping on it. Zhuowen took a deep breath and stepped on the purple road with his right foot. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying aura came crashing down on them. Zhuowen's face changed slightly and his body trembled. He circulated the primordial path, and his body became hazy with purple light. The originally terrifying pressure receded like the tide. Zhuowen pushed off with his right foot and landed lightly on the road. Could it be because I have cultivated the primordial path? Zhuowen recalled the terrifying pressure he felt when he first stepped onto the road, and a look of understanding appeared in his eyes. Looks like there is no danger on this road. I was worried for nothing. Master Zhuo. Dong Wang Tai also landed on the side of the road. We saw Zhuowen jumping on the road. He could not help but want to give it a try. However, the moment he landed on the primordial chaos path, he immediately let out a blood-curdling scream and sprawled on the ground, prostrating himself on the ground. F***CK. What's going on? Dong Wang Tai spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face changed drastically. He felt that his body was being squeezed by a terrifying pressure. His flesh and bones felt like they were being torn apart. I can't take it anymore. Master Zhuo, save me. I'm going to die. Dong Wang Tai spat out another mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with horror. No matter how he tried to summon the energy around him, he was easily crushed by the terrifying power of the primordial path. The energy of the primordial path was much higher than his. His energy was as small as an ant in front of the primordial path. Zhuowen, who was walking in front of the primordial path, also heard Dong Wang Tai scream. He turned his head and saw Dong Huang Tai lying on the ground. He was struggling but could not move at all. Zhuowen strode towards Dong Huang Tai, lifted him up, and leaped off the Hongmeng Dao. Dong Huang Tai gasped for breath and struggled to stand up. He thanked Zhuowen. "Lord Zhua, thank you for saving my life. Also, my lord is indeed my lord, to be able to walk on this path with such terrifying pressure." Dong Huang Tai sincerely admired Zhuowen. The primordial chaos Dao's oppressive aura was seriously too terrifying. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if he stayed in the primordial path for too long, he would surely perish. Zhuowen had a strange look in his eyes. He seriously sized up the primordial chaos path behind him and revealed a thoughtful expression. It looked like the primordial chaos path had absolute suppression over cultivators below the heaven-crushing realm. Dong Huang Tai was an early-stage fifth blight expert, after all. The moment he stepped onto the Grand Mist path, he was pressed to the ground, unable to move at all. This was just too ridiculous. Moreover, Zhuowen also recalled the terrifying pressure he felt the moment he stepped onto the primordial path. He knew that if he didn't circulate the primordial chaos technique, his condition might not be any better than Dong Huang Tai's. Although his battle prowess was terrifying, his cultivation was indeed below the heaven-crushing realm. Under the terrifying rules of the primordial chaos path, he was completely suppressed. This primordial chaos path is formed from the primordial chaos tree's energy, and I can completely offset the pressure on it by circulating the primordial chaos technique. Looks like the primordial chaos stone and the primordial chaos tree have a lot to do with each other, Zhuowen thought. Zhuowen walked to the side of the primordial chaos path and summoned array flags with his right hand, setting up a teleportation formation beside the primordial chaos path. Although deep in his heart, he yearned to immediately step onto the primordial chaos path and head to the 100 domains outside the realm. However, he knew that he couldn't leave now, and he couldn't leave. There were still many threats in the universe, and he had to eliminate all of them before he could leave with peace of mind. "Fellow Taoist Dong Huang, let's go." Zhuowen waved his right hand, and Dong Huang Tai landed lightly on the deck of the flying divine tool. Dong Huang Tai still hadn't recovered, and the injuries on his body could be said to be extremely serious. Zhuowen landed on the deck and immediately controlled the flying divine tool to leave this place. That's the primordial chaos path? Damn it, there's actually someone who broke through to the heaven-crushing realm in the universe. At another border of the universe, Gong Ji Lu and NIC, who were hiding in the dark, saw the purple streak of light that extended into the depths of the chaotic universe, and they were both shocked. Gong Ji Lu's expression was gloomy, and NIC said in panic, "Senior brother, what should we do? A heaven-crushing realm elite just had to appear in the universe at this time. Isn't this spoiling our plans?" Gong Ji Lu's eyes flickered, and he said, "The primordial chaos path is a passage that belongs to the beings of the lower realm, and we beings of the 100 domains outside the realm can't enter. It's impossible for us to kill this new heaven-crushing realm cultivator through the primordial chaos path. The only thing we can do now, besides waiting for an opportunity, is wait for the Golden Corner Starry Skies army." And IC said helplessly, "If this heaven-crushing realm cultivator didn't appear, the Golden Corner Starry Skies army would completely crush the Golden Corner Starry Sky. But now I'm afraid the Golden Corner Starry Sky has no chance of winning." Gong Ji Lu shook his head and said, "That's not necessarily the case. If it's a peak 5th blight cultivator with a heaven-crushing divine tool, it won't be difficult to kill someone who just broke through to the heaven-crushing realm. Senior brother, could it be that you plan to?" NIC said in surprise. Gong Ji Lu said, I plan to lend my divine tool to the Golden Corner Starry Skies divine master, and this new heaven-crushing realm cultivator must be killed. Otherwise, we won't have any chance. Junior sister, I know what you're worried about. No matter how bold that Golden Corner Starry Skies divine master is, he won't dare to have any ideas about my divine tool. And even if he really does, I have a way to make him obediently hand over the divine tool. And said in a low voice, I believe, senior brother, but we still have to be careful. After all, your divine tool isn't ordinary. Gong Ji Lu smiled and nodded, and then looked at the chaotic starry sky not far away. That area of the starry sky gradually distorted, and a rotating black hole appeared. From the black hole, a tiger-headed and human-bodied mechanical life slowly walked out. Are the two of you Lord Gong Ji Lu and Lord Nic? The tiger-headed mechanical life saw the two people on the divine ship, knelt on the ground respectfully, and asked with a deep bow, It's us. Your divine master sent you here, right? Gong Ji Lu asked casually. This lowly one is Hu Lu, a guard by the divine master's side. I've specially come to invite the two of you to the golden corner starry sky to have a chat with the divine master. The tiger-headed mechanical life said respectfully, You lead the way. Chapter 36-37. Master Zhua, are you sure you don't want to stay in the Demon Saint Palace? I can give you the position of Palace Master. You will be in charge of everything in the Demon Saint Palace. In front of the Demon Saint Palace, Dongwang Tai stood respectfully in front of Zhuowen, begging Zhuowen to stay in the Demon Saint Palace. Ever since Dongwang Tai obtained the 7-life energy recovery pill from Zhuowen, his respect for Zhuowen has increased to the point of fanaticism. Now, he is willing to give up the position of Palace Master and respect Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood on the space-time roulette deck and shook his head. Your Demon Saint Palace is not suitable for me. I will be staying in Ryuka, in Xian, Mi Heavenly Domain, for a while. This part of the galaxy will not be peaceful soon. You need to improve your cultivation and prepare for the upcoming war. Dongwang Tai's eyes became serious, and he nodded heavily. Zhuowen had already told him about the golden starry sky. Only then did he realize that the starry sky he was in was actually so weak. If you have any problems, you can come to Xiemi Heavenly Domain to find me. This jade slip records the approximate location of Ryuka. As long as you have my token, you can enter Ryuka's territory. Also, help me look out for things that can weaken the Blight Tribulation. These things are very important to me. Zhuowen threw the token and jade slip to Dongwang Tai, turned into a stream of light, and left. About a month later, Zhuowen returned to the valley where Ryuka's territory is located. This time, Zhuowen came back with Mu Chenxue, and everyone in Ryuka came out to welcome them. Especially when everyone knew that Mu Chenxue was pregnant, they were very happy. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao were the happiest because they finally got a precious grandchild. That night, Ryuka held a grand banquet. Everyone from Ryuka attended the banquet to congratulate Mu Chenxue. After the banquet, Zhuowen told Ryuka about the golden corner starry sky and told her not to slack off during this time. She should try her best to improve her cultivation and prepare for the final battle. After the crowd dispersed, only Long Xiaotian, Feng Xiao, Luhan Tian, and some other Ryuka executives and people close to Zhuowen were left in the hall. All right, where's Wushang? Zhuowen noticed that Moyan Wushang didn't attend the banquet. This made Zhuowen feel strange, so he couldn't help but ask. Mu Chenxue's beautiful eyes were also filled with doubt. She felt a little strange in her heart. After all, Moyan Wushang was her best friend. How could he not attend such an occasion? It's like this. After you left Ryuka last time, Wushang closed herself to cultivate. She said that she couldn't be disturbed. This closed-door cultivation is very important to her. If she was disturbed, she would fail. So, even if you came back, I didn't dare to call Wushang for fear of disturbing her. Feng Xiao said with a wry smile. Zhuowen was stunned. Then he shook his head with a wry smile and said, Why is this girl so desperate? Even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up. Mu Chenxue laughed and said, My husband, I know Wushang better than you do. Although she looks weak on the surface, she's actually very strong and opinionated. I'm afraid she wants to catch up with you and not be too far behind you. Zhuowen sighed and said with a little emotion in his eyes, That's right. She doesn't like to be protected. Instead, she likes to protect others. A few days later, a servant knocked on Zhuowen's door. Master Zhuo, there's a group of people outside the valley. The leader claims to be from the heaven accessing place and is here to see you. Seeing Zhuowen open the door, the servant reported the situation outside the valley to Zhuowen. Oh, people from a heaven accessing place? Go and invite them to the reception hall. Zhuowen said calmly. The servant's face was ruddy. He took the order and left quickly, as if he wanted to perform as well as possible in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen was the idol of many young people in Ryuka, and this servant was no exception. It was an extremely rare opportunity for him to enter Zhuowen's attic and report to Zhuowen in person. He could boast about it to his friends for a year when he went back. In the reception hall, Zhuowen sat on the main seat. The green-haired mummy and crepe myrtle star sat on either side of him. Since Green Hat had submitted to Ryuka, he had become very powerful. He had become the second most powerful man in Ryuka, second only to Zhuowen. Therefore, he was treated very well in the Long family. The members of the Long family were very respectful to this person with a terrifying appearance. It could be said that Green Hat lived a very comfortable life in Ryuka. Fortunately, Green Hat knew who was the real master in Ryuka, so he was very cautious in his words and did not do anything out of line. After a while, a group of people came in from outside the reception hall. The leader was no stranger to Zhuowen. It was the Black King. In addition to the Black King and the human tribe, he also saw the alien tribe. The leader of the alien tribe was the ancestor of the nine-tailed fox tribe. Master Zhuo, the Black King and the ancestor of the nine-tailed fox tribe knelt on the ground and saluted Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded, but his eyes fell on a man behind them. The man was tied up and kept twisting and struggling. After asking, Zhuowen learned that the Three Clear Street and the Flood Street had a common enemy because they knew that the Golden Corner Starry Sky was going to invade. Not long ago, the two streets put aside their previous grudges and reached a decision to reconcile. They were going to work together to resist the invasion of the Golden Corner Starry Sky. This time, the Black King and the ancestor of the nine-tailed fox tribe were sent by the sky-accessing place to guard the depths of the natural moat. The Black King and the ancestor of the nine-tailed fox tribe were both fourth blight experts. With such experts guarding the natural moat, if there was any trouble in the depths of the natural moat, it would immediately spread throughout the starry sky. After the two arrived at the Xianmi heavenly domain, they did not go directly to the depths of the natural moat. Instead, they first came to visit Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen did not say anything. In fact, in the hearts of most of the experts in the starry sky, Zhuowen was already the real ruler of the starry sky. And Zhuowen was now staying in the Xianmi heavenly domain. Therefore, when the Black King and the others entered the Xianmi heavenly domain, they naturally did not dare to go to the natural moat without even saying goodbye. Zhuowen was a little speechless. The Black King and the others were too cautious. They just came to the Xianmi heavenly domain and did not even have anything to do, but they still had to come and greet him first. It was too boring. It seems that the battle between Bing Hui and me has completely scared these people out of their wits. He treats me like he's his own father. Zhuowen facepalmed as he thought to himself. If you have nothing to do in the future, you don't have to come to Ryuka to greet me. You can rest assured that I will not interfere in your affairs, and I will not ask you to do this or that. Zhuowen was speechless. The Black King and the ancestor of the nine-tailed fox tribe looked at each other and bowed respectfully, saying that they understood. By the way, who is this? Zhuowen pointed at the strange man who was imprisoned behind the Black King. The Black King looked at the man and said in a low voice, Lord Zhuo, we do not know this man either. When we got close to the valley, we smelled a strange fragrance. I followed the fragrance and found this man. At that time, this man was not far from the valley and was sneaking around. He even built a temporary cave abode. He was probably spying on Ryuka. I felt that something was wrong, so I captured him and brought him to you, my lord. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and grabbed at the air with his right hand. The man was caught in Zhuowen's hand. Chapter 36-38. It seems that you're using some kind of disguise. Zhuowen sneered and tightened his right hand. The man immediately screamed, and then his body began to flash chaotically. Bang! Zhuo went casually through the man on the ground. The Black King and the others looked over and realized that the creature in front of them was no longer a human man. Instead, it was a humanoid mechanical life. Its body was purely made of mechanical locks. The humanoid mechanical life struggled on the ground in pain, but did not make a sound. Speak. Who sent you here, and what is your purpose in coming here? Zhuo asked indifferently. This humanoid mechanical life was sent by Gongji Lu. Relying on the desireless sachet, Zhou Yin found traces of Moyan Wushang and finally came to the valley where Ryuko was. However, he soon found that outside the valley, there was a terrifying array. He understood at a glance that the array outside the valley was definitely a heaven-breaking array. If he forced his way in, he would die without a doubt. However, he was unwilling to give up, so he stayed outside the valley, found a hidden place, built a temporary cave, and observed the valley from afar. He hoped that Moyan Wushang would come out so that he could capture Moyan Wushang in a place where no one was around and then bring him to Gongji Lu. As long as he completed this, it would be a great merit. After all, Gongji Lu was a lord from the 100 Domains. He could easily reward him with good things. Therefore, Zhou Yin did not want to give up this opportunity. However, his luck was really bad. The strange fragrance emitted by the desireless sachet exposed his position. In the end, he was discovered by the Black King and captured. Don't you know that a great disaster is coming for you? Zhou Yin was not afraid. Instead, he said coldly and arrogantly. He had long heard about the strength of the wandering starry sky from the Divine Master. It was said that there were only 2 fifth blight powerhouses in the starry sky, but there were dozens of them in the Golden Corner starry sky. The gap was too big. As long as the large teleportation array in the Golden Corner starry sky was completed, it would be the end of the wandering starry sky. However, you can rest assured that as long as you let me go now, when our starry sky completely occupies your starry sky in the future, I will plead with the Divine Master for you to spare your lives. Zhou Yin said. Bang! As soon as Cursian finished speaking, he was kicked into the air. Then, that leg whipped Cursian's waist. Cursian crashed to the ground, and his foot stomped heavily on Cursian's chest. You're already at death's door, yet you're still so arrogant. Believe it or not, I'll slaughter you on the spot. The one who attacked was the Black King. At this moment, the Black King was stepping on Cursed Yin as he spoke with an unfriendly gaze. Not only the Black King, but the rest of the people also had cold gazes. The killing intent in their eyes was undisguised. They couldn't wait to kill Cursed Yin. Cursed Yin was stunned. He struggled and said, I'm giving you a chance to choose a way out. Don't you cherish it at all? Black King, what's the point of wasting words with this idiot? Just kill him. The nine-tailed fox patriarch said coldly. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Cursed Yin quickly admitted defeat and begged for mercy. He didn't want to die for no reason. In his mind, Golden Corner Starry Sky's invasion of Spiraling Starry Sky was a battle that they would definitely win. In the future, he would definitely share the fruits of this victory. How could he die so early? That would be a worthless death. Don't kill me. I'll confess everything. Cursed Yin quickly begged for mercy. Zhuowen was a little surprised. He thought that Cursed Yin would continue to be stubborn. However, he didn't expect this guy to be such a coward. He was so cowardly after such a threat. Next, Cursed Yin confessed everything he knew. Only then did Zhuowen know that this guy was sent by Golden Corner Starry Sky to monitor the situation at the border of Spiraling Starry Sky. Originally, the border was guarded by the formation he had set up and the Black Dragon. It was impossible for Cursed Yin to enter Spiraling Starry Sky. However, Gong Kilyu appeared later and destroyed the formation with one move, instantly killing the Black Dragon. Cursed Yin was let in by Gong Kilyu to find Desireless. As expected, they're here for Wushang. Gong Kilyu and NIC are really haunting me. Zhuowen's eyes flickered with a cold light. The killing intent in his heart towards Gong Kilyu and NIC grew stronger. However, he also knew that Gong Kilyu and Nic's cultivation were not weak. Moreover, they refused to enter spiraling starry sky. If he went out and fought with the two of them, he would definitely suffer a great loss, unless his cultivation could be raised to the 5th decay realm. Zhuan could feel that if his cultivation reached the 5th decay, coupled with his powerful divine soul power, it would be no problem for him to fight with an expert like Gong Kilyu. Tell me, how many 5th decay powerhouses are there in Golden Corner Starry Sky? Zhuan planned to get some questions about Golden Corner Starry Sky's combat power from Cursed Yin. Although he had subdued the Black Dragon, he didn't have time to ask about the strength of Golden Corner Starry Sky, because he had too many things to do. When he went to Heavenly Mode again, the Black Dragon had already been destroyed by Gong Kilyu. He couldn't ask even if he wanted to. Now, he could only ask Cursed Yin. Divine Master, Great Divine Master, and 49 Divine Protectors, a total of 51. Cursed Yin honestly explained. When Cursed Yin said this, except for Zhuan, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. No one expected that the strength of Golden Corner Starry Sky, mentioned by Cursed Yin, would be so terrifying. There were a total of 51 5th decay powerhouses. This was incredible. One had to know that in their starry sky, there were only 2 such powerhouses. The gap was not ordinary. However, after their shock, their eyes involuntarily fell on Zhuan. When they saw Zhuan's calm eyes, they felt inexplicably at ease. Although the overall strength of Spiraling Starry Sky was far inferior to Golden Corner Starry Sky, they still had a trump card like Zhuan. This was an existence that could even destroy a descender like Bing Hui. His strength had surpassed all the lower realm starry skies. With Zhuan, they were confident that they could defend Spiraling Starry Sky. Next, Zhuan asked Cursed Yin to talk about a lot of things about Golden Corner Starry Sky. Only then did he have a general understanding of Golden Corner Starry Sky. Sir, I have told you the truth. Shouldn't you let me go? Cursed Yin asked cautiously. Go back to your Golden Corner Starry Sky, but you have to remember to bring me a message to your Divine Master, Gong Kilyu, and Nic. Zhuan said lightly. Cursed Yin was ecstatic when he saw that Zhuan was really going to let him go. He asked subconsciously what message. Chapter 36-39. Yes. I will definitely bring it to him. Zhou Yin had long been scared out of his wits by Zhuan. He did not even realize that the shackles on his body had been released. Get lost, Zhuan said indifferently. Zhou Yin came back to his senses. He glanced at Zhuan, then ran out of the reception hall without looking back. The Ryuka in the valley had already received Zhuan's telepathic message, so they did not stop Zhou Yin from leaving. Master Zhua, this person is going to be let go just like that. Black King watched Zhou Yin disappear from the range of his telepathic message and said with some reluctance, if Zhuan had not spoken, he would have already chased after Zhou Yin and killed him. A mere peek of the 3rd blight will not affect our Star Wars. The reason I let him go was to let him pass on my words to the Divine Master. Zhuan said indifferently. Black King and the others saw that Zhuan had already said this, so they naturally did not dare to refute. Next, Zhuan asked Black King if Taoist 3 purities had found anything that could weaken the blight. Black King answered truthfully that Taoist 3 purities did have some clues, but they were still searching. If they found anything, they would immediately send it to Zhuan. After the 2 sides talked for a while, Black King took the initiative to leave. His purpose in coming down was not to see Zhuan, but to guard the depths of Heaven's Moat. Before Black King and the others left, Zhuan gave Black King an array flag. This array flag was the control array flag that he had set up on the border of Heaven's Moat. It could control the operation and state of the array. After the Black King obtained the array flag, he was filled with joy. To him, it could be said that it was a timely reign. For the next period of time, Zhuan basically stayed in Ryuka to accompany Mu Qinxue and his family. He did not cultivate other than fusing with the 10,000 lotus in his divine soul. If he cultivated again now, He was afraid that he would not be able to suppress it, and the fifth blight would immediately descend. Until now, he still hadn't found anything that could weaken the blight tribulation. So how could he cultivate and break through? For this reason, he not only used the power of the Heaven Accessing Place and the Demon Saint Palace, but also issued many notices in the primitive heavenly domain and the Xianmi heavenly domain. The contents of the notice listed many types of items that could reduce the effects of the blight calamity, as well as extremely generous rewards. Furthermore, Zhuowen was different from the past. Legends about Zhuowen had already spread throughout the entire starry sky. It could be said that Zhuowen's name was now known by everyone. With the announcement in Zhuowen's name, all the cultivators in the starry skies did their best to help Zhuowen find items that could weaken the decay tribulation. After leaving Ryuka, Cursian flew towards the heavenly mode. However, when he reached the starry sky bordered deep within the natural mode, he was blocked by a great formation. He did not need to think to know that this grand array should have been set up by Zhuowen. However, the strange thing was that the grand array seemed to know that he had reached the border and stopped automatically. Then, Cursian entered the chaotic starry sky. After Cursian left, the grand array closed again. Cursian found the original teleportation array. He took out a formation flag and activated the small teleportation array. His figure gradually disappeared. Through the teleportation array, Cursian returned to the golden corner starry sky. He went straight to the huge mechanical palace where the Divine Master was. When he entered the palace, there were already mechanical servants waiting for Cursian to bring him to the Divine Master in the depths of the palace. At this moment, in the center of the main hall in the depths of the palace, a round thunderball was suspended. The entire main hall was made of metal, and there were huge electronic screens suspended around it. It looked very high-tech. The Divine Master and the Great Divine Master stood side by side. They looked more like humans, but their skin was metallic silver. It was not like the skin color of normal humans at all. The Divine Master was a burly man. His body was wrapped in metal armor, and he carried a huge broad-bladed sword on his back. The Great Divine Master had no facial features. He wore a black cloak around his neck and stood quietly in place. At this moment, the two supreme rulers of the Golden Corner Starry Sky were standing respectfully behind two figures. They were a pair of young men, but their shapes were quite strange. They had a human face and a snake body. They were Gongji Lu and Nic, whom Zhuowen had met in the depths of the natural mode. Zhou Yin greets the two lords, the Lord God, and the Great God Master. Cursian hurriedly knelt on the ground and said with an uneasy expression, "Cursian, why did you suddenly come back? Didn't I ask you to investigate the movements of the wandering starry sky? Also, Lord Gongji Lu asked you to do something important. Have you finished it?" The Divine Master said with a displeased expression when he saw Cursian return in a hurry. Cursian lowered his head and did not dare to look at Gongji Lu and the others. He said in a low voice, "Lord Gong, this lowly one has let you down. The mission has failed." Gongji Lu smiled, but there was no other change in his expression. Instead, he said indifferently, "Tell me in detail how you failed. Also, you should have found out who Desireless is." Cursian did not dare to hide anything and told him everything that had happened in the wandering starry sky. "You mean, in the end, you don't know the identity of Desireless?" Gongji Lu frowned slightly and said with a little displeasure, "Yes." Cursian had to bite the bullet. "Humph, you really can't do anything right. Since you have been caught by the indigenous people over there, why did the indigenous people of the wandering starry sky let you go? Did you say something you shouldn't have said there?" The Divine Master snorted coldly. "No, the reason why the indigenous people let me go was mainly because they wanted me to bring a message to you, Lord Divine Master." Cursian said in fear. "What message?" The Divine Master asked. He said, "No matter who it is, I will let the blood of those who dare to step into my territory stain the starry sky." Cursian repeated Zhuowen's words verbatim. The Divine Master was taken aback, then immediately laughed out loud and said, "Ha ha, this person is really too arrogant. It's just a starry sky that has just been born not long ago, and its peak battle strength is only 2/5 blight cultivators. With this bit of strength, he still dares to say such words. There must be something wrong with his head. Gong Ji Lu's gaze was solemn, and he said solemnly, "Golden Corner Divine Master, perhaps you still don't know one thing. Not long ago, the primordial chaos path appeared in the wandering starry sky." The Divine Master's smile immediately froze, and his eyes widened. He looked at Gong Ji Lu and said, "Lord Gong, is this true? We saw it with our own eyes." Gong Ji Lu said solemnly, "The primordial chaos path appeared? Could it be that a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse just happened to appear in the wandering starry sky at this time? How is this possible? It's too much of a coincidence." The Divine Master's expression became somewhat ugly. The overall strength of the wandering starry sky was much weaker than their golden corner starry sky. Therefore, the Divine Master seemed to have a card up his sleeve when it came to invading the wandering starry sky. He knew that as long as he sent troops, the wandering starry sky would be under his control. But now, there was an unforeseen event. Someone in the wandering starry sky actually successfully broke through the heavens. Then this was really difficult to handle. After all, a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse was sufficient to match a magnificent army. This battle already started to be disadvantageous to their golden corner starry sky. Chapter 3640. In the Godmaster's opinion, Gong Ji Lu and Nic's cultivation and combat power were much stronger than the guy who had just advanced to the Heavenbreaker realm. However, if the two of them enter the galaxy, they would definitely be at a disadvantage when facing the Heavenbreaker native. Godmaster Golden Corner, you don't have to worry so much. I have my own considerations. When your Golden Universe Starry Sky army enters the Wandering Starry Sky, I'll lend you my divine artifact, and then you can help me kill that Heavenbreaker native. You have to know that my divine weapon has reached the peak of Stage 2 Heavenbreaker. Gong Ji Lu said calmly. What? It's a Stage 2 Heavenbreaker divine weapon. The Godmaster was stunned at first. Then he laughed and said gratefully, "If Lord Gong is really willing to lend me your divine weapon, my Golden Corner Starry Sky will definitely win." Godmaster Golden Corner was very confident. He was an elite who was infinitely close to the Heavenbreaker realm, and with a Stage 2 Heavenbreaker divine weapon, it was more than enough to kill a cultivator who had just advanced to the Heavenbreaker realm. As long as Godmaster Golden Corner can do what you promised me, I'll naturally help you. Gong Ji Lu said with a smile. Don't worry, Lord Gong. Your business is my business. I'll definitely do it well. The Godmaster knelt on one knee, his eyes filled with sincerity. Haha, with your words, Godmaster Golden Corner. That's enough. Let's go. Now take me to see your large-scale teleportation formation. Although I haven't refined formations before, when I was in the 100 domains, I saw the process of many formation masters refining formations, so I might be able to see some of your formation's flaws. Gong Ji Lu laughed out loud. Follow me, Lord Gong. Godmaster Golden Corner stood up and respectfully led Gong Ji Lu into the depths. Oh right, this trash deserted the battle. I think it's a serious violation of military discipline, so he should be killed. Gong Ji Lu took a few steps, but the corner of his eyes fell on the dazed Curse Yin as he spoke calmly. You're right, Lord Gong. Golden Corner God Lord nodded and immediately said coldly, Men, drag Curse Yin down and behead him. 5 years later, in Ryuka's base, Zhuowen sat on a futon in the middle of the room. A green glow surged between his eyebrows. This green light was like a spirit that was jumping around. Then, all of a sudden, the green light shot out from between his eyebrows and turned into numerous green lotuses. These green lotuses were not big, only the size of a pupil. They swarmed out and filled Zhuowen's room. After deducing for 5 years, I think it's time to try 10,000 lotuses return a 1. Zhuowen calmly looked at the 10,000 green lotuses floating in the air. He took a deep breath and began to manipulate these green lotuses with his enormous soul power, causing them to approach and merge with each other. As the green lotuses continued to merge, a huge illusory image of a green lotus gradually appeared above Zhuan's head. Zhuan's face was getting paler and paler. Cold sweat had already appeared on his forehead and back. He did not expect that the process of fusing with the green lotus would be so painful. This pain was not physical pain, but the pain of the spirit and soul. It was as if his soul was burning on a raging fire. The pain was indescribable. Zhuan did not say a word and silently endured it. His soul was desperately trying to fuse with the surrounding green lotuses. As the green lotuses continued to merge, the illusory image of the green lotus above Zhuan's head gradually solidified. 6 hours later, Zhuan lay on the ground with a plop. He had finally completely fused with the last green lotus. But at the same time, Zhuan had also fainted. The pain of the soul and soul was too intense. Even though Zhuan had a strong will, he still fainted from the pain. When Zhuan fainted, the huge green lotus formed by 10,000 lotuses returned to one quietly floated above Zhuan. This huge green lotus slowly bloomed in the air. When the green lotus completely bloomed, a cluster of green flames quietly burned in the center of the green lotus. This cluster of green flames slowly drifted out and then entered between Zhuan's eyebrows. After the green flame left, the huge blooming green lotus floating in the air began to wither and dim. In the end, it disappeared. After that cluster of green flames entered Zhuan's soul, it caused a sea of green flames that enveloped his entire soul. However, this blue sea of fire was not meant to destroy the divine soul, but to transform the divine soul. In the raging sea of green flames, Zhuan's soul was rapidly transforming and evolving. Finally, an extremely terrifying aura burst out from between Zhuan's eyebrows. This aura was invisible and intangible, but in the pavilion where Zhuan was located, all the living beings within a radius of who knew how many kilometers felt as if their souls were being heavily squeezed. It was as if some kind of invisible hand was pinching their souls and constantly rubbing them. It was very uncomfortable. Everyone in Ryuka felt the throbbing of their souls. They came out one after another and couldn't help but look at the pavilion where Zhuan was. However, there was an exception in Ryuka, and that was Moyan Wushang's room. Only Moyan Wushang's room was very quiet. No one came out from it, as if he didn't feel the throbbing of his soul. What a powerful soul fluctuation. It seems that my husband's soul has made new progress. Mu Chenxue came out of the main hall with the help of Feng Xiao. She looked in the direction of Zhuan's room and muttered in a low voice. Now, Mu Chenxue's belly was bulging more and more, but it still couldn't hide her beautiful face and graceful figure. This Zhuan is really too much. Recently, he has been coming out less and less to accompany you. He is in seclusion every day, Feng Xiao complained. Mu Chenxue said with a smile, "Grandma, don't blame my husband. We don't know when the army of the Golden Corner Starry Sky will invade. My husband is also very worried, so he is working so hard to cultivate. He is doing this for our family." Feng Xiao kindly said, "My Chenxue is still the most sensible. That brat when can marry you. It is really his good fortune from his previous life. I'm also afraid that he will be too tired. I am not complaining about him, but I am complaining that he doesn't know how to cherish his body." Mu Chenxue smiled and looked at Zhuan's pavilion with her beautiful eyes. She didn't plan to disturb Zhuan. She knew that if Zhuan came out of seclusion, he would naturally inform them. Now that they haven't been notified, they naturally wouldn't disturb Zhuan, so as not to distract Zhuan. 3 days later, Zhuan slowly opened his eyes, sat up, and pressed his forehead with his right hand. Until now, his head was still aching, as if someone had hammered it. My soul has broken through. Chapter 36:41. Within Zhuan's spirit, there were 9 spirit sword essences floating quietly. Originally, there was nothing strange about this, but what was strange was that the surface of the 9 spirit sword essences was covered in green flames. The green flames danced on the surface of the spirit's sword essences, forming the appearance of green lotuses blooming one after another. Zhuowen could sense that his spirit had indeed transformed and evolved again. It was now unbelievably powerful. But he never expected that the spirit's sword essences would also mutate. He could feel that the green lotus flames on the surface of the spirit's sword essences were absolutely extraordinary. Let's test its power. Zhuowen stood up. With a thought, he entered the macro world. As Zhuowen's strength continued to improve, the macro world became more and more perfect, and the barrier of the macro world became more and more solid. Moreover, the primordial technique was also very magical. Every time he cultivated the primordial technique, this technique could communicate with the macro world on its own and use the energy improved by the primordial technique to transform the macro world. It was precisely because of this effect that the big world had changed a lot over time. It was much stronger than before, and the strength of its world barrier was no weaker than the strength of the boundary of Wander Starry Sky, where Zhuowen was. Moreover, Zhuowen believed that as his cultivation continued to improve, his macro world would only become more and more perfect. He was looking forward to what the macro world would look like when he reached the peak of his cultivation. Zhuowen came to a barren area and landed on a heavily weathered boulder. He sat cross-legged and pointed the sword finger of his right hand between his eyebrows. A blazing golden light surged between his eyebrows, and this golden light was mixed with a trace of green light. Whoosh! A terrifying sword essence swept out from between his eyebrows, and a divine sword flew out. The divine sword shone with golden light, and the strange thing was that the surface of the sword was covered in green lotus flames. Bang! The divine sword leaped into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds, and then rushed straight down. Finally, the tip of the sword stabbed into the ground in the middle of the barren land. Just like this, the divine sword stabbed into the barren land. Then, a terrifying sword chi suddenly spread out from the divine sword. Accompanying this sword chi was the green lotus flame that spread out in a ring like an endless tide. In an instant, the entire wasteland was enveloped by the green lotus fire, turning into a sea of fire. Zhuowen could clearly feel that the entire world was trembling, and the vast wasteland enveloped by the sea of fire was actually sinking. This wasteland was actually burned into a huge crater by the flames. Moreover, this huge crater was still forming at an extremely fast speed, and it was spreading towards the depths of the ground, as if it was going to burn through this piece of land. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and the divine sword that was stuck in the center of the wasteland flew out and returned to his spirit. As for the surrounding green lotus fire, it was as if it had lost its backbone after the divine sword disappeared and started to disperse. Zhuowen floated in the air and looked down at the area where the green lotus fire had disappeared. What he saw was no longer a desert, but an unimaginably large abyss. The abyss was too deep and bottomless, as if there was no end to it. What a terrifying power! Zhuowen sucked in a breath of cold air. One had to know that the spiritual sword intent he released just now was only 10% of its power. He originally thought that the spiritual sword intent condensed from 10% of the power of his spirit wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. However, he didn't expect that the commotion it created would far exceed Zhuowen's imagination. If he used 100% of the power of his spirit, Zhuowen even doubted that his world would be able to withstand the green lotus fire that seemed to have come from hell. Perhaps the complete form of the green lotus fire would be able to burn the entire world into nothingness in an instant. The complete form of this technique definitely can't be used in spiraling the galaxy. Zhuowen took a deep breath, and only then did he slightly calm the complicated emotions in his heart. The current spiritual sword intent was really too terrifying. If he really used it at full strength, he was afraid that spiraling the galaxy would be destroyed by him. However, he also knew that the spiritual sword intent unleashed from 10% of the power of his spirit was enough to obliterate any living being below the heaven-crushing stage. Even cultivators at the heaven-crushing first transformation stage would have difficulty resisting it. In the future, I'll divide the spiritual sword intent into 10 levels. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I definitely won't use the 10 levels of spiritual sword intent. Zhuowen muttered to himself. Of the 10 levels of spiritual sword intent, each level corresponded to 10% of the power of his spirit. For example, the first level of spiritual sword intent was condensed from 10% of the power of his spirit by Zhuowen, and its power was considered the weakest. The 10 levels of spiritual sword intent were naturally condensed from all the power of his spirit, and it was also one of Zhuowen's most powerful techniques at the moment. After leaving the great world, Zhuowen received a message from Long Xiaotian. According to him, an item that could weaken the blight tribulation had been found at the Sanqing Street, and it had already been sent to Ryuka. Since it was sent from the Sanqing Street, it should be very likely that it's the real deal. Zhuowen thought for a moment before opening the door and heading to the reception hall. During the past 5 or 6 years, Zhuowen had been stationed in Ryuka, and after his announcement had spread to every corner of the galaxy, Ryuka had become very lively. Every day, many cultivators would rush to Ryuka to announce that they had found something that could weaken the blight tribulation. However, the items that Ryuka received were basically all fake, and they were all returned. After many cultivators were refused entry, they no longer cared about the announcements in Ryuka, and the number of cultivators who came to Ryuka to claim credit gradually decreased. In the end, everything returned to normal. When Zhuowen arrived at the reception hall, he saw a man in a green robe standing silently with a brocade box in his hand. Long Xiaotian was standing not far away from the man, and he was conversing with the man in green robes in a low voice. Zhuowen's arrival also attracted the two's attention. "Winner, you're here. You two talk first. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave." Long Xiaotian patted Zhuowen's shoulder and left the reception hall. "You're from the Palace of Three Pristines?" Zhuowen sized up the man in front of him. He was wearing the Taoist robes of the Palace of Three Pristines, but he had never seen him before. "I'm Qinzong, a new disciple of my master," Qinzong said respectfully. However, Zhuowen noticed that Qinzong looked at him with a hint of fanaticism and worship. Zhuowen was already used to this kind of expression. The members of the Long family and many other human cultivators all looked at him with the same expression. After all, after he defeated Bing Hui, the entire galaxy was filled with rumors about him, and the more they spread, the more ridiculous they became. Zhuowen had become a legend in the galaxy, the uncrowned king in everyone's hearts. Thank you for making this trip." Zhuowen's gaze fell on the brocade box in Qinzong's hand. "Oh, I almost forgot. My master told me to hand this to you personally, Master Zhuo." Qinzong quickly handed the brocade box to Zhuowen with a solemn expression, as if it was a handover ceremony. Zhuowen was speechless at Qinzong's serious expression. Chapter 3642. This is a dark stone. It's an extremely rare item in the cosmos. According to the records, dark stones have only appeared a dozen or so times in the history of the cosmos. Master spent a great deal of effort to find this dark stone in a secret realm. Master was even injured because of it, Chen said. Zhuowen put away the brocade box, then took out a jade slip and handed it to Qinzong. "The information recorded in this jade slip will be very useful to your master. Give this to him and treat it as his reward for finding the dark stone," Zhuowen said. Qinzong hurriedly waved his hands in refusal, but under Zhuowen's insistence, he finally put the jade slip away. "I won't disturb you any further, Lord Zhuo. Farewell." Qinzong stood up, bowed deeply to Zhuowen, then left the guest hall. Zhuowen silently watched Qinzong leave. The jade slip he'd given him contained a cultivation technique, the extreme purple spirit art. He'd obtained it from the owner of the golden coffin. The extreme purple spirit art was a heaven-breaching technique. Although it wasn't a very high level among heaven-breaching techniques, it was still very powerful. Although it wasn't very high in the cosmos, any heaven-breaker cultivation technique was something that could only be found through luck. Taoist Three Purities talent was already quite terrifying, but he'd been split off from Wanyo's body and was affected by it. If he'd been able to assimilate Zhuowen's Panga's sacred body, he would have had a very good chance of breaking through the cosmos. However, there was another way. Cultivating a heaven breaker cultivation technique was a shortcut to breaking through the cosmos. Zhuowen believed that with the extreme purple spirit art, Taoist Three Purities would be able to break through the cosmos in tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. In addition, Zhuowen didn't care that Taoist Three Purities would attack the Ryuka once he did. He knew that Taoist Three Purities was a smart person. If he dared to attack the Ryuka, then Zhuowen would kill him even if he had to go to the heavens. Taoist Three Purities wouldn't make such an enemy for himself. Of course, the purple extreme spiritual art that Zhuowen gave Qinzong was not the original, but a copy. The real original was in the Ryuka library. Once someone in Ryuka reached the peak of the fifth blight, they would be able to practice the extreme purple spiritual art and shorten the time needed to break the heavens. After obtaining the darkest stone, Zhuowen did not immediately cultivate and break through. He was still waiting for news from the Demon Saint Palace. He was fully aware of the terror of the fifth blight. One darkest stone was not enough. He needed something that could weaken the blight. Dongwang Tai had already sent him a message some time ago. Regarding the item that could weaken the blight calamity, he already had some ideas. Zhuowen knew that the Demon Saint Palace should be coming soon. Over the next few months, Zhuowen neither went into seclusion nor cultivated. He spent most of his time with his family. He looked at Mu Qinshue's belly, which was bulging day by day. He knew that he was going to be a father soon, and an inexplicable feeling sprouted in his heart. He had never experienced this feeling before. It was a mixture of excitement, fear, and curiosity. Finally, half a year later, someone from the Demon Saint Palace arrived. Zhuowen personally went to welcome them, because the one who had come to Ryuka this time was the Demon Saint Dongwang Tai. Many people in Ryuka knew of the Demon Saint's reputation, and a grand welcoming party was held. All of Ryuka was mobilized, and the place was bustling with noise and excitement. Dongwang Tai had brought Zhuowen the rainbow divine spring. Only 7 drops of spring water would flow out of this divine spring every million years. Each drop of spring water had a different color, forming 7 different colors. This was how the rainbow divine spring got its name. It was said that after consuming the rainbow divine spring, one's body would become extremely resistant. When Wu Taiji and Taoist Three Purities had reached the 5th blight, they had found a drop of the rainbow divine spring and successfully passed the 5th blight. Dongwang Tai had brought 7 drops of the rainbow divine spring to Zhuowen, and 7 drops of the rainbow divine spring at that. Zhuowen didn't let Dongwang Tai get the short end of the stick and gave him a 7 lives recovery pill. In terms of value, the 7 lives recovery pill was a bit more valuable than the rainbow divine spring. However, the rainbow divine spring was something Zhuowen needed. In his eyes, the rainbow divine spring was far more valuable than the 7 lives recovery pill. Dongwang Tai was naturally overjoyed. He had already tested the effects of the 7 lives recovery pill, and it was surprisingly effective. He had diluted the 7 lives recovery pill in a total of 108 bottles of divine water, and even after diluting the pill, Dongwang Tai's cultivation speed increased by who knew how many times. Fortunately, Dongwang Tai didn't tell Zhuowen the truth. If Zhuowen were to find out that this guy was using the 7 lives recovery pill to cultivate, it would be like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. The 7 lives recovery pill's main effect was recovery and healing, but this guy was using it for cultivation. Dongwang Tai stayed in Ryuka for a few days. During this time, he also chatted a lot with Mu Qinshui and said that the position of the Holy Lady of the Demon Saint Palace had always been reserved for Mu Qinshui. After Dongwang Tai left, Mu Qinshui was a little reluctant to part with him. After all, Dongwang Tai was not only her savior, but he had also treated her well all these years and treated her like his own daughter. The relationship between the two was like that of father and daughter. "Hubby, After you get the rainbow divine spring and the stone of utmost darkness, do you plan to break through during this period? Muchinshua leaned on Zhuowen and asked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, After our child is born, I will go through the tribulation. Moreover, there is still no news from Green Hat and Purple Star-Lord. I am not in a hurry to go through the tribulation. Aside from the 3 clear streets and the Demon Saint Palace, Zhuowen also sent Purple Star-Lord and Green Hat to search the Xianmi Heavenly Realm and the Primitive Heavenly Realm. Zhuowen had already set a deadline for the 2 of them. They had to return to Ryuka before his child was born. Zhuowen was very cautious. It would be best if he could find something to weaken his blight tribulation. After all, his blight tribulation had already exceeded the threshold of the half-step heaven-crushing stage, so it was worth it to make more preparations. Time flew by, and another 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, everyone in Ryuka was extremely nervous. Most of the Ryuka people were gathered outside a pavilion. This pavilion was the one that Zhuowen and Mu Chinshue resided in. At this moment, Zhuowen, Long Xiaotian, Feng Xiao, and the other Ryuka family members were all waiting anxiously in the courtyard of the pavilion. Zhuowen was pacing back and forth with a solemn expression. He was in a complete mess. Today is the day that Chun Shui will give birth. We've already found the best midwife in the Xianmi Heavenly Realm, so Chun Shui should be fine. You don't have to worry too much. When Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao saw Zhuowen's anxious and uneasy appearance, they both opened their mouths to persuade him. Zhuowen stopped in his tracks and heaved a faint sigh as he tried to calm the anxiety in his heart. Even though there was no danger in giving birth to a child at Mu Chinshua's level, Zhuowen still couldn't help but feel a mixture of worry, excitement, and anticipation. All of a sudden, the entire valley began to tremor. Immediately afterward, a beam of golden light erupted from the pavilion, transforming into a golden pillar of light that shot into the sky. Then, the clouds in the sky began to swirl as if they had been pierced through by the pillar of light. Immediately afterward, the roars of dragons and cries of phoenixes appeared out of thin air, creating an extremely extraordinary phenomenon. All of Ryuka, as well as all of the nearby cultivators, looked up at the phenomenon in the sky with different expressions. They were all stunned. Following the rare phenomenon, the cries of a baby could be heard, grabbing everyone's attention. Chapter 3643. When a midwife's voice came from the room, Zhuowen, who was waiting outside the room, let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Haha, Brother Zhuo, congratulations! Lu Hantian and Wu Dai quickly came forward to congratulate Zhu Yifan. At the same time, the higher-ups of Ryuka also congratulated Zhuowen. They were happy for Zhuowen. What are you waiting for? Go in. Feng Xiao pushed Zhuowen, which woke up Zhuowen, who was still in a daze. Good. I'll go in now. Zhuowen chuckled as he opened the door and entered the room alone. In the antique room, there was a rather pleasant smell of sandalwood floating in the air. At this moment, in the room, several maids were busy pouring water, holding towels, and so on. Beside the bed, an old woman with white hair was holding a crying baby in her arms. She looked at the baby with a kind expression. Master Zhuo, you are here. The young master is very healthy, and he was born with a natural phenomenon. His aura is comparable to that of Sage. His future is limitless. When the old woman saw Zhuowen, she gently handed the baby in her arms to Zhuowen. Miraculously, when the baby was handed over to Zhuowen, the baby's cries stopped. The baby looked at Zhuowen curiously with his beautiful eyes and smiled. A pair of small hands reached out to Zhuowen's face and gently stroked Zhuowen's cheeks. The midwife and her maids were startled. The midwife quickly congratulated Zhu Yifan. Master Zhuo, it seems that the young master has recognized you as his closest relative. The young master's wisdom is extraordinary when he was just born. I am ashamed of my inferiority. Midwife, thank you for your hard work. Go out and report to my father that we have already prepared the reward that we promised you in advance. Zhuowen said with a smile. The midwife looked very excited. She bowed to Zhuowen and hurried out of the room. Ryuka had given her a generous reward this time. Even she couldn't keep her composure. She couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart. Zhuowen dismissed the maidservants in the room, leaving only Mu Qinshue's personal maidservant, Hong Yu. He then sat by the bed and looked at Mu Qinshu, who had her eyes slightly closed. At this moment, Mu Qinshu was probably too tired and had fallen into a deep sleep. Zhuowen grabbed Mu Qinshue's jade-like hand and slowly transferred the energy in his body to Mu Qinshu. Although the destructive power of the Shattered Divine Power was terrifying, under Zhuowen's deliberate control, the gradual infusion of the Shattered Divine Power into Mu Qinshue's body was a kind of holy medicine for healing injuries. As for the baby in Zhuowen's left hand, he opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhuowen and Mu Qinshu curiously. He was Zhuowen's son and had inherited the powerful bloodline that Zhuowen had cultivated for many years. He was born with high intelligence, so naturally he could recognize the man and woman in front of him. They were his biological parents. Mu Qinshue's eyelashes slightly moved, and she opened her eyes. "Husband, where's our child?" Mu Qinshu was a little confused. She looked at Zhuowen's face and muttered in a low voice. Zhuowen handed the baby in his hand to Mu Qinshu and said with a smile, "Qinshu, our child is very healthy and very cute." The baby was very smart. When Zhuowen handed him to Mu Qinshu, he immediately stretched out a pair of white lotus root-like hands, as if he wanted to be hugged. Mu Qinshu sat up and took the baby. Tears flowed out of the corners of her eyes, and she said with tears of joy, "I finally gave birth to you, my child." Seeing this scene, Zhuowen also sighed in his heart. 10 years was not a long time for cultivators. It passed in the blink of an eye. But for Mu Qinshu, who had been pregnant for 10 years, it seemed extremely long. "Husband, what do you think we should name him?" Mu Qinshu looked at Zhuowen. Her eyes were as gentle as water, and her face was filled with happiness. Zhuowen scratched his head and said with some embarrassment, "Naming is not my strong point. How about this? I'll let father and mother come in and let them give their opinions." With that, Zhuowen hurriedly left the room. Mu Qinshu saw Zhuowen's flustered look and couldn't help but smile. She also didn't expect that her husband, who is usually mature and calm in the face of danger, would actually behave so childishly at this time. This was the first time she saw this side of Zhuowen. Not long after Zhuowen left, Long Xiaotian, Feng Xiao, Lu Hantian, and several other good friends of Zhuowen followed Zhuowen into the inner room. They first asked about Mu Qinshue's health, then walked to the hall and discussed the name. Finally, after a long debate, everyone finally reached a consensus. The child's name will be Junin, and he is a Ryuka, so his surname will naturally be long. Of course, his surname can also be Zhua. Our Ryuka is also a Zhua family, so both surnames are very important to our family. Long Xiaotian laughed and said, "Tracing back to their roots, their surname was Long, and the surname Zhua was hidden to avoid being hunted down. Whether it was the surname Zhua or Long, Ryuka recognized both surnames. In Ryuka, Zhuowen could be called Zhuowen or Longwen. It's just that Zhuowen was used to his original name, so most of the time, he preferred others to call him Zhuowen. Let's call him Zhua Junin. Zhu means you, which is this child. A means peace. Zhua Jun means peace. Zhua Jun means peace. No matter what happens in the future, Zhua Junin hopes that this child will be safe and sound. This is the blessing of us elders for him. Zhua Junin. What a good name." Mu Qinshu smiled and immediately raised the baby with both hands and said gently, "From now on, your name will be Zhua Junin." Little Junin giggled as if he understood Mu Qinshu's words and was very satisfied with the name. That night, Ryuka held a grand banquet to celebrate the birth of little Junin. At the banquet, everyone attended except for one person. Is Wushang still in seclusion? During the banquet, Zhuowen asked the servants in Moyan Wushang's house. He learned that Moyan Wushang had been in seclusion all these years and had not stepped out of the house. No one paid much attention to this matter, but Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. After the banquet ended, everyone dispersed. After settling down Mu Qinxue and the child, Zhuowen went straight to Moyan Wushang's house. Zhuodaran. At the entrance of Moyan Wushang's house, the two guards saw Zhuowen and quickly knelt on the ground to salute him. Their eyes revealed a fanatical look. "I'm here to look for Wushang," Zhuowen said with a smile. The two guards readily allowed Zhuowen to enter the house. One of the guards even reminded Zhuowen that ever since Moyan Wushang came out of seclusion, he had not come out, and there was no movement in the house. Chapter 36:44. After Zhuowen entered the house, his spirit sense radiated out like a fan. Suddenly, every blade of grass and every tree in Mo Yin Wushang's house appeared in Zhuowen's spirit sense. But what surprised Zhuowen was that he did not see Moyan Wushang in the house. In the whole house, other than the two guards at the door, there was no other living thing. "What's going on?" Zhuowen's eyes became serious. He was sure that Moyan Wushang had not left the Ryuka camp. This was because he had set up many large arrays in the valley where the Ryuka camp was located. There were even many large surveillance arrays. He was very clear about the comings and goings of the Ryuka people. If Moyan Wushang had secretly left, he would not have been able to escape his eyes. So he was sure that Moyan Wushang had not left the Ryuka. When Zhuowen approached the door of the room, he was blocked by a ripple of array. This array was not a high-level array. It should have been set up by Moyan Wushang. From the traces of the array, Zhuowen could see that it had not been closed at all. Obviously, after Moyan Wushang had set up this array, he had not left the room at all. Bang! Zhuowen easily tore the array, opened the door, and entered the dark room. He searched around, but there was no one in the room. He even checked the remote parts of the room, but there was no secret passage. Zhuowen's eyes showed a trace of surprise. From the various traces, he could see that Moyan Wushang seemed to have disappeared from the world. But how could this be? Zhuowen came to Moyan Wushang's bedside. The bed was very tidy, but because it had not been used for a long time, it was covered with dust. Zhuowen took the pillow and saw a bead and a jade slip under the pillow. The bead was crystal clear. In the middle of the bead, there was a trace of fog. In the faintly discernible fog, Zhuowen discovered something that looked like a passageway. The first end of the passage was connected to the fog, while the other end was pitch black. No one knew where it led to. Zhuowen looked at the jade scroll and found that the contents of the jade scroll were written by Moyan Wushang himself. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Zhuowen's gaze once again fell on the bead in his hand, and his expression became extremely solemn. In the jade slip, Moyan Wushang explained very clearly that this pearl was called the Merciless and Desireless Pearl. The Merciless Pearl was an extremely famous pearl within the Nuwa clan. This was because within the Merciless, Desireless Pearl, there was a terrifying trial to become a true, merciless, desireless person. Once he passed through the trial within the pearl, he would obtain the truly powerful strength of merciless, desireless. Moreover, it was said that this trial was not really about severing the 7 emotions and 6 desires, but the price was very high because the trial inside the bead was extremely dangerous. Throughout the history of the Nuwa clan, all of the geniuses who had entered the pearl had perished. Not a single one of them had succeeded. It was precisely because the Merciless and Desireless Pearl had an almost 100% failure rate that the Nuwa clan did not plan on using it to cultivate Merciless, Desireless person. Instead, they used a simple and crude method to cultivate Merciless, Desireless person by severing the 7 emotions and 6 desires. This was why the Nuwa clan sent many cultivators to the starry skies of the lower realms to select suitable candidates for Merciless, Desireless person to experiment on. Although the failure rate of the Merciless and Desireless person plan was very high, at least it had a certain success rate. This also allowed the Nuwa clan to cultivate some Merciless and Desireless person. It was precisely because of the success of the Merciless and Desireless person plan that the Merciless and Desireless pearl was ultimately abandoned by the Nuwa clan. Later on, for some unknown reason, it fell into the hands of Luo Hong. Although Luo Hong did not plan on using the merciless and desireless pearl, she did not plan on throwing it away either. Instead, she kept it. After all, this pearl had an extremely long history within the Nuo clan, and she could not bear to throw it away. In the end, after Luo Hong joined Moyan Wushang, the merciless and desireless pearl also fell into his hands. Moyan Wushang was already very disgusted by the merciless and desireless person plan, so he naturally had no feelings towards the merciless and desireless pearl. Later on, however, after Moyan Wushang was rescued by Zhuowen multiple times, he deeply understood his own inadequacy and helplessness. In the end, she decided to use the merciless and desireless pearl in order to not become a burden to Zhuowen, and in order to be able to help Zhuowen in the future. She had long since heard from Luo Hong that the power of merciless and desireless within the merciless and desireless pearl was the most orthodox and also the most powerful. However, the trials within the merciless and desireless pearl were simply too terrifying. The failure rate was 100%, and countless geniuses of the Nuo clan had died. It was only in the end that the Nuo clan had abandoned it. Crack! Zhuowen crushed the jade slip, his gaze growing increasingly gloomy. Moyan Wushang had clearly stated in the jade slip that she had been in seclusion all these years because she had been undergoing trials within the merciless and desireless pearl. How could Wushang be so stupid? This merciless and desireless pearl is so dangerous, but she still wants to go in and undergo trials. Zhuowen clenched his fists, his face filled with a sigh. He picked up the pearl, silently staring at the mist-covered tunnel within the pearl. No, I have to go in and take a look. Zhuowen's expression was resolute. He knew that he couldn't just leave Wushang alone. Although he didn't know the exact situation of Wushang, he had to see her if she was alive or dead. He had to enter the pearl to find her. However, Zhuowen didn't immediately enter the pearl. He knew that the inside of the bead was full of danger, so before entering the bead, he had to be fully prepared. The next day, Green Hat and Purple Star Lord finally returned. Although the two of them were a little later than the agreed time, Zhuowen didn't blame them. This was because the two of them had finally found something that met Zhuowen's requirements after much effort. Zhuowen looked at a stalk of grass that was overflowing with spiritual qi in the brocade box. The shape of the grass was very strange. It actually looked like a divine sword. Moreover, although the grass was lying quietly in the brocade box, the moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on the grass, he felt as if he saw countless divine swords flying through the air, giving him the illusion that 10,000 swords were piercing through his heart. Is this the sword heart grass? Zhuowen closed the brocade box and revealed a gentle smile. The sword heart grass also had the effect of weakening the decay tribulation. Its effect was not inferior to the 7-color divine spring and the darkest stone. Moreover, the sword heart grass was more valuable and precious than the 7-color divine spring and the darkest stone. Green Hat and Purple Star Lord naturally went through a lot of hardships to find the sword heart grass. They paid an unknown price and even narrowly escaped death several times. Thank you for your hard work. This is the 7 Lives Qi Recovery Pill. Take it as a reward for your hard work. Zhuowen was very satisfied. He immediately took out 2 7 Lives Qi Recovery Pills and gave them to Green Hat and Purple Star Lord. The moment the two of them saw the 7 Lives Qi Recovery Pill, their eyes lit up. They had long heard that Zhuowen had a heaven-breaking divine pill. Although it was a healing divine pill, it was said that it had unimaginable benefits for cultivation. This time, Zhuowen gave them the divine pill that they had been looking forward to for a long time. Naturally, the two of them wouldn't be polite. They quickly put away the divine pill and thanked Zhuowen with smiles on their faces. After obtaining the sword heart grass, Zhuowen gathered everyone in Ryuka and informed them that he would be leaving Ryuka for a period of time today. He planned to go through the 5th decay tribulation. Then, he personally bid farewell to Long Xiaodian, Feng Xiao, Mu Qinxue, and his son. Chapter 3645. A stream of light shot out from the border of the heaven-accessing secret realm, instantly leaving the border and entering the vast, chaotic, starry sky. The flowing light faded away, revealing a young man with a rather delicate appearance. This young man was Zhuowen. After leaving Ryuka, he came all the way to the heaven-accessing secret realm and entered the chaotic, starry sky through the heaven-accessing secret realm. It had to be said that the pressure in the chaotic, starry sky was really terrifying. Back then, Zhuowen's cultivation was not high enough, so he went out once. It could be said that he was extremely embarrassed by the pressure in the chaotic, starry sky. But now it was much better, but he also felt as if his whole body was filled with lead. If it weren't for his strength being much stronger than ordinary half-step breaking heaven realm experts, his movements would have become very slow in the chaotic, starry sky. Zhuowen knew that his fifth blight tribulation would be much stronger than the fourth blight, and its power might exceed the limit of this starry sky. So, when he planned to go through the fifth blight tribulation, he had already chosen the place to go through it. Naturally, it was the chaotic, starry sky. The chaotic, starry sky was all-encompassing, and it was far more vast than he had imagined. No matter how powerful his blight tribulation was, it probably wouldn't have any effect on the chaotic, starry sky. Zhuowen landed on a piece of dark rock. This rock was huge, no less than the size of an ordinary life planet. This was the closest rock to the border of the heaven-accessing secret realm. On the surface, this rock looked no different from the meteorites in the heaven-accessing secret realm. However, Zhuowen knew that these shattered rocks were far harder than any meteor in the lower realm's starry skies. Even a full blow from a fifth blight expert would probably only leave a palm-sized mark on this rock, and it wouldn't be able to shatter the entire rock. Zhuowen knew that the material structure of the chaotic, starry sky was far more advanced and stable than the material in the lower world. As a result, anything formed in the chaotic cosmos was much tougher than the cosmos of the lower realms. This was also why breaking heaven realm cultivators were already invincible in the lower world, but in the chaotic, starry sky, there was a risk of death at any time. The chaotic, starry skies were far more threatening than the starry skies of the lower realms, and the living beings that could survive in the chaotic, starry skies were all formidable monsters. Zhuowen took out the darkest stone, the rainbow divine spring, and the sword heartgrass. After that, he took out a praying mat and sat down cross-legged. He silently breathed in and out, constantly adjusting his condition. When Zhuowen felt that his condition was more or less adjusted, he slowly stood up. His eyes shone with a radiance that was hard to look at. "Let's start," Zhuowen muttered to himself. Soon after, an extremely terrifying energy began to surge within his body. This energy was like a mist that instantly dissipated and swept towards the depths of the chaotic, starry sky. It was like some kind of bait that was luring some kind of terrifying energy from the depths of the starry sky. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, two black holes appeared around Zhuowen, who was sitting cross-legged on the rock. What? The moment Zhuowen saw the two black holes, his pupils involuntarily shrank. He had experienced 4 blight tribulations, and the energy of each blight tribulation basically came from the black holes formed in the depths of the starry sky. And the energy of each blight tribulation that came from the black holes was exceptionally terrifying. And there was always only one black hole. But now, there were 2 black holes, and each black hole gave Zhuowen a feeling of danger. Boom! Boom! However, Zhuowen didn't have time to think about it, because in the 2 black holes, there was a blazing red light surging. Immediately, red lotuses fell from the depths of the black holes one after another. The surface of these red lotuses burned with fiery red flames, but the surface was filled with a terrifying aura of destruction. It was the annihilation red lotus that had caused Bing Hui to be in an extremely difficult situation. Although Zhuowen had already expected it, the moment he saw the annihilation red lotus, his expression didn't look too good. Back then, his cultivation was only at the peak of the 3rd blight, but he didn't dare to touch the annihilation red lotus at all. He had to hide in the golden coffin to barely escape the calamity. But this time, he wouldn't hide anymore. His cultivation had already advanced to the peak of the fourth blight, and his strength had already undergone a transformation. He wanted to try and see if he had the qualifications to resist the Annihilation Red Lotus with his current strength. Zhuowen began to circulate the primordial chant at high speed, and all the apertures on his body were erupting with purple energy. His eyes were dyed purple, and his black hair instantly turned purple and crazily grew to his waist. Boom! Zhuowen punched out, blasting the first Annihilation Red Lotus into countless sparks. But at the same time, a burning smell came from Zhuowen's fist. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. It seemed that he still underestimated the power of the Annihilation Red Lotus. His cultivation was more than several times stronger than before, and the primordial chant had doubled his strength, but he was injured just by dealing with one Annihilation Red Lotus. Although it was only a minor injury, it was an indisputable fact that he was injured. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After Zhuowen destroyed the first Annihilation Red Lotus, one after another Annihilation Red Lotus fell from the sky, almost drowning Zhuowen. Primordial purple snow. Zhuowen stomped his right foot, and his entire body transformed into an illusory purple shadow. The destructive red lotuses that blotted out the sky and covered the earth could not capture Zhuowen's figure at all. At the same time, purple snow began to fall from the sky. The purple snow had a bone-chilling coldness. The moment it came into contact with the Annihilation Red Lotus, the intense coldness began to gradually weaken the power of the Annihilation Red Lotus. Although the Annihilation Red Lotus's aura was still terrifying, the flames burning on its surface gradually weakened. Primordial Life Breaker. The moment Zhuowen dodged the first wave of Annihilation Red Lotus, he used Life Breaker. In the void behind him, a huge purple river gushed out and instantly drowned the Annihilation Red Lotus below. The result surprised Zhuowen. The purple river seemed to be a natural counter to the Annihilation Red Lotus, extinguishing the flames of the Annihilation Red Lotus. Although the number of Annihilation Red Lotuses increased, it was like a continuous downpour. However, Zhuowen relied on the seamless combination of primordial purple snow and primordial life annihilation to barely cope with it. When Zhuowen destroyed the last Annihilation Red Lotus, the two black holes above stopped moving, as if they were brewing some kind of stronger energy. Zhuowen didn't dare to be negligent. He touched his waist. Chapter 3646. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, dense white lights shot out from the two black holes. These white lights were like snowflakes, covering Zhuowen's field of vision. They came from all directions, completely sealing off all of Zhuowen's escape routes. Zhuowen was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, silently waiting for these white lights to approach. Hongmeng Flying Blade. When countless bone spurs suddenly approached Zhuowen, a strange purple saber appeared around him. The purple saber was ethereal and traceless. In an instant, it changed hundreds of positions around Zhuowen, forming a strong defense around him. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, sparks flew around Zhuowen. The bone spurs and the purple saber intertwined, creating blazing sparks. At the same time, purple snow and life severing came out in full force. They used offense as defense, forming an impenetrable defense around Zhuowen. What made Zhuowen sigh in relief was that although there were many bone spurs rushing out from the black holes, their power seemed to be relatively average. The defensive barrier formed by the three abilities was able to withstand the barrage of bone spikes. These bone spurs seemed to be weaker than the Red Lotus of Destruction. Zhuowen muttered to himself in surprise. However, as soon as his voice fell, the surrounding bone spurs suddenly stopped attacking. Immediately, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the bone spurs began to gather in the sky. Countless bone spurs merged and finally condensed into a huge bone dragon. This bone dragon was thousands of meters long. The surface of its white bones was constantly flickering with mysterious and strange runes. In the bone dragon's huge eye sockets, a cluster of green flames burned. That cluster of flames seemed to have a life of its own as it constantly jumped about. At the same time, it stared coldly at Zhuowen. Roar! The huge bone wings on the bone dragon's back spread out. Immediately, it fell vertically toward Zhuowen like a comet. Boom! When it got close to Zhuowen, the bone dragon's huge bone wings suddenly swept out, and the three great divine abilities surrounding Zhuowen were all broken. Zhuowen groaned and retreated in the starry sky. After retreating hundreds of kilometers, he suddenly stepped on the void. Powerful energy turned into a circular ripple under his feet. He relied on the power of the shock wave to barely stabilize his body. So strong, Zhuowen looked at the bone dragon in front of him with a gloomy face. He knew that the bone dragon was the true face of the bone spurs. Its power was indeed much more terrifying than the red lotus of destruction. Roar! The bone dragon roared and swept over again. Wherever it passed, a terrifying cold air spread. The surrounding floating rocks were all frozen into ice. Zhuowen took a deep breath and took out a jade bottle. This jade bottle contained the 7-colored divine spring. He pulled out the cork and poured all 7 drops of the divine spring of different colors into his mouth in one breath. When the 7-colored divine spring entered Zhuowen's body, it turned into 7 types of energy and spread through his meridians. Suddenly, Zhuowen's muscles swelled. 7 colored meridians appeared between the lines of his muscles, densely covering the surface of Zhuowen's skin. The moment he drank the 7-colored divine spring, Zhuowen took out the sword heart grass and placed it on his palm. Surging shattered divine force condensed in his palm. The originally inconspicuous sword heart grass suddenly burst with a terrifying sword intent under the infusion of the shattered divine force. Immediately, the sword heart grass began to grow wildly and finally grew to the length of a normal divine sword. This sword was very extraordinary. It looked like a divine sword, but when he touched it, he felt like he was touching a blade of grass. Zhuowen knew that the divine sword was purely made of sword heart grass. Its essence was still grass, but it was an extraordinary grass. Bang! With the sword heart grass in hand, Zhuowen stood on the bone dragon. Boom! The terrifying sword intent formed an intense storm that bombarded the bone dragon. It immediately blocked the bone dragon's advance. Bang! 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 The bone dragon tore through the storm of sword intent and rushed up again, fighting Zhuowen. Zhuowen was not to be outdone. The two fought crazily in the chaotic starry sky. It had to be said that the sword heart grass could indeed restrain the blight. Zhuowen found that the sword heart grass could actually weaken the bone dragon's power when it bombarded the bone dragon. At the same time, because he had taken the 7-color divine spring, his current physique was just enough to be partially immune to the power of the blight. The bone dragon was originally formed from the blight, so when it bombarded Zhuowen, most of its power was actually immune. If Zhuowen had not taken the 7-color divine spring, he would have been seriously injured in a few moves. But now the two had exchanged dozens of moves. Zhuowen was fighting fiercer and fiercer, and the injuries he suffered were relatively light. Roar! 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 The bone dragon could not help but be furious when it saw that it could not take down the human in front of it. In the depths of the chaotic starry sky, more bone spikes swept out from the 2 black holes. These bone spikes all converged on the bone dragon's body. Suddenly, the bone dragon's body swelled again, reaching an extremely exaggerated level. Moreover, the blight aura on the bone dragon's body became stronger. Boom! The bone dragon suddenly clawed at Zhuowen. The power of this move became even more terrifying, sweeping up a terrifying storm. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly, and he held the sword heart grass in front of him. Boom! The dragon claw and the sword heart grass collided. Suddenly, a terrifying energy ripple surged at the point of contact. This energy ripple turned into a violent shock wave, constantly spreading in all directions. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. He flew backward for thousands of kilometers before he could barely stabilize his body. His condition was quite miserable, and his body was dripping with blood. His muscles could not withstand the terrifying pressure, so most of them had burst open. Now, he looked like a bloody man. Its power has become so much stronger. Zhuowen's expression became extremely ugly. At the same time, he also found that the two black holes in the depths of the chaotic starry sky began to shrink. He knew that the bone dragon should have gathered most of the blight energy from the black holes. As long as he could defeat the bone dragon, he should be able to pass this blight. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took out the darkest stone. He breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was well prepared. He had prepared 3 items that could weaken the blight. As for the darkest stone, it was the most powerful of the 3. When Zhuowen crushed the darkest stone, the dark energy contained in the stone rushed out like a tide, entangling the surface of the sword heart grass. The surface of the sword heart grass, which was originally emitting a green luster, turned black, and its aura soared more than 10 times. When the sword heart grass and the darkest stone merged, a huge shadow shrouded Zhuowen. The bone dragon had already appeared above Zhuowen's head, and its huge dragon claw mercilessly slammed down. Bang! Zhuowen swept out his sword and stood on the dragon claw. Strangely, the dark energy on the surface of the sword heart grass disintegrated and was annihilated into powder when it came in contact with the dragon claw. It's effective? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He stomped his right foot and rushed up like an arrow, cutting off the bone dragon's head with his sword. Then, he landed on the bone dragon's spine. Holding the hilt of the sword heart grass with both hands, he stabbed it into the gap in the spine. Then, holding the hilt with both hands, he quickly ran along the spine toward the bone dragon's tail. Chapter 36:47. What a surging power! When the bone dragon fell to the ground, the 2 black holes in the depths of the chaotic starry sky slowly dissipated. At the same time, a mysterious power emerged from somewhere in the chaotic starry sky and entered Zhuowen's body. It was like a blessing that entered Zhuowen's Tianling acupoint and spread throughout his body, causing Zhuowen to feel an indescribable sense of comfort. Zhuowen, on the other hand, felt as if his entire body had undergone a metamorphosis. His entire being was filled with inexhaustible power. I've finally successfully advanced to the 5th blight. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with excitement. The moment he entered the 5th blight, Zhuowen discovered that the pressure exerted on him by the surrounding chaotic starry sky seemed to have weakened. However, he knew that it was not that the pressure of the chaotic starry sky had weakened, but that he had become stronger. Now, he was very confident that he did not need to use his spirit attack. Just his fragmented divine power and primordial divine powers were enough to rival a heaven-crushing first transformation elite. If he used his spirit attack, Zhuowen was confident that he would not be afraid of a heaven-crushing third transformation elite. It had to be said that after Zhuowen's spirit absorbed the primordial stone, his spirit cultivation was extremely fast, and there were no bottlenecks at all. He knew that all of these benefits were brought about by the primordial stone. Now, he was looking forward to cultivating the official primordial technique after his cultivation reached the heaven-crushing stage. He did not know how much the primordial technique would change him. Zhuowen re-entered the heavenly mystic realm and returned to the Xianmi heavenly domain through it. He did not return to Ryuka. Instead, he headed straight for the natural moat. Now that his cultivation and soul had made major breakthroughs, Zhuowen believed that even if he were to face Gong, Ji Lu, and NIC, who had given him a lot of pressure, he would still be able to deal with them. Therefore, he planned to go to the natural moat to see if Gong, Kilyu, and NIC were still guarding outside. Moreover, he was also a little worried that the army of the Golden Galaxy would attack at any time. Although Zhou Yin had confessed to him that it was not easy to create a large-scale teleportation formation in the Golden Galaxy and required a lot of effort and time. At least for a short period of time, the army of the Golden Galaxy would not be able to reach the wandering starry sky. Zhuowen knew that after confirming that the army of the Golden Galaxy had not arrived, he planned to enter the Merciless Pearl. Regardless of whether Moyan Wushang had passed the trial in the bead or not, he had to find her and bring her out. Lord Zhuo, why did you come down personally? When Zhuowen reached the depths of the moat, he immediately attracted the attention of the cultivators stationed here. The one who asked him was the Black King. Apart from human cultivators, there were also many non-human cultivators stationed in the depths of the natural moat. Besides, the humankind and the non-humankind were no longer hostile to each other, and now they were living in harmony. The nine-tailed fox ancestor followed closely behind the Black King and bowed deeply to Zhuo when in greeting. I came down to see if there's anything wrong with this place. Black King, open the array first. I want to go outside and take a look, Zhuowen said indifferently. The Black King was stunned and immediately advised. Lord Zhuo, this is the real chaotic starry sky. It is full of negative energy and terrifying pressure. Even low-level heaven-breaking realm experts will be affected by the chaotic starry sky. Those below the heaven-breaking realm will even endanger their lives. Zhuowen nodded and said, I know about this. This is my arrangement. Don't worry, I have never done anything reckless. Zhuowen seemed to have thought of something. He remembered that Zhou-Yan's cultivation was only at the third decay, but he could hide in the chaotic starry sky outside the wandering starry sky and investigate everything in the wandering starry sky. Didn't the black dragon come from the chaotic starry sky when he came to the border? They didn't seem to be affected by the chaotic starry sky. What was going on? The Golden Galaxy has a long history. In such a long history, they might have invented something that can temporarily dispel the influence of the chaotic starry sky. Zhuowen thought. The Black King and the nine-tailed fox clan ancestor looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Although they felt that Zhuowen's suggestion was inappropriate, they didn't dare to disobey Zhuowen's orders. After the formation opened, Zhuowen took a step forward. Following his memories, he arrived at the location of Gong Ji Lu's divine ship. However, to Zhuowen's disappointment, there was only a huge rock and faint energy ripples. As for Gong Ji Lu and NIC, they were long gone. Zhuowen didn't believe it. He released his divine sense and stepped on the rock with his right foot, flying away from the border. This, Lord Zhuo, is really strong. He doesn't seem to be affected by the chaotic starry sky at all. Inside the border, both human and foreign cultivators stared blankly at Zhuowen's figure moving freely in the chaotic starry sky. After a while, Zhuowen returned to the border. He frowned slightly. Just now, he had looked around but didn't find any trace of Gong Ji Lu in NIC. Zhuowen was very confident in his current divine sense. With the strength of his divine sense, no matter how well Gong Ji Lu and NIC hid, they couldn't escape his detection. Moreover, with Gong Ji Lu and NIC's arrogance, if Zhuowen came out of the border, they would have attacked him. However, there was no movement at all. He knew that there was only one possibility, and that was that Gong Ji Lu and NIC were no longer here. It seems that Gong Ji Lu and NIC have gone to the Golden Galaxy. Zhuowen thought to himself. After he returned to the border, he began to set up several formations again. Each formation was at the heaven-breaking stage, and they were all linked together. They were extremely powerful. In addition, Zhuowen gave the Great World to his doppelganger. The resources and heaven-breaking divine weapons in the Great World were still inside. He planned to let his original body enter the ruthless and desireless Pearl, while his doppelganger remained in Ryuka. In addition, Zhuowen also left 3 perfect soul sword essences in his original body. With the power of the soul sword essences and heaven-breaking divine weapons, Zhuowen knew that no matter how powerful the divine master of the Golden Galaxy was, he probably couldn't take down his doppelganger. As for Gong Ji Lu and NIC, he was even less worried. It was unlikely that the two of them would sever their cultivation. Even if they did, it would be a good thing for Zhuowen. It would be much easier for him to kill the two of them. After making all the necessary preparations, Zhuowen sent his doppelganger back to Ryuka while his original body set up a temporary cave abode in a remote cave above the natural moat. After setting up many restrictions at the entrance of the cave abode, he took out the ruthless and desireless pearl and stared at the faintly discernible passage inside the pearl. Chapter 36:48. When Zhuan's divine sense probed into the ruthless and desireless pearl, he discovered that his field of vision had changed instantly. His surroundings were no longer the interior of the cave abode, but filled with clouds and mist. And beneath his feet were gray steps. These steps continued to rise, forming a passageway. Zhuan was very familiar with this passageway. It was precisely the passageway inside the ruthless and desireless pearl. When Zhuan withdrew his divine sense, his field of vision returned to the cave abode again, and before his eyes was the ruthless and desireless pearl. Looks like the way to enter this pearl is to use divine sense as a key to open the passageway inside this pearl. Zhuan was very clear just now. Not only did his divine sense enter the pearl, but his entire person had entered. He hid the pearl in a very concealed place, then used his divine sense to enter the interior of the pearl once more. He looked at the end of the passageway, but could only see pitch-black darkness. Even his divine sense was actually unable to probe too far before it was blocked back by some kind of power. He knew that inside this pearl world, he could only rely on his naked eyes. His divine sense was completely restricted. This made Zhuan secretly vigilant in his heart. Now that his divine sense had already reached the level of the heaven-crushing 3 transformations, it was actually still so severely suppressed inside this pearl. It could be seen that the power hidden inside this pearl was far beyond his imagination. Zhuan followed the passageway and quickly swept forward. In a short while, he arrived at the end of the passageway. At the end stood a large, round, arched, hollowed-out door. This door was forged from some kind of white jade. Now, it was very dilapidated. Clearly, it was extremely old. At the edge of the door's arc, Zhuan saw a line of writing. This line of writing was very faint. Under the erosion of a long time, this writing had already gradually been worn away. But Zhuan could still barely make out the contents of this writing from the traces of the writing. Severing the 7 emotions? Severing the 6 desires? Well, a load of nonsense. Zhuan muttered to himself, but his eyes narrowed, and he fell into deep thought. It looked like the person who left behind the words on this door back then completely disagreed with the practice of severing the 7 emotions and severing the 6 desires. Just did not know who exactly this person was? Zhuan did not ponder for too long as he stepped through the door. The moment he entered the gate, he realized that the ruins and desolation that he had seen from outside the gate had completely changed. What appeared in front of his eyes was a sea of beautiful women singing and dancing, debauchery and debauchery. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with the sight of jade bodies lying on the ground. Even Zhuowen felt a little hot from the bottom of his heart. These little brothers are so handsome. You just came to our place, right? Come, big sister will play with you tonight. A snow-white figure leaned over. This was a beautiful young woman. She was wearing a translucent veil, and her skin was faintly discernible. She was indescribably seductive. Her breath smelled like orchids, and her beautiful eyes were intoxicated. She whispered seductively into Zhuowen's ear. An illusion? Zhuowen frowned slightly, and a powerful spiritual power gushed out from between his eyebrows. Like a big hand, it instantly tore the surrounding illusion into pieces. But soon, he realized that the illusion that he had torn apart had revived. The scene of beautiful women singing and dancing, and the scene of debauchery, once again appeared in front of his eyes. And the seductive body that was leaning on him was also tightly pressed against him, full of endless temptation, pretending to be mysterious. Zhuowen grunted coldly as he utilized his soul sword insight to slash apart the illusions in the surroundings. But what shocked him was that the illusion appeared again, and the scene was even more exciting. Zhuowen repeatedly tore apart the illusion, but in the end, it was to no avail. The illusion was restored. He knew that using violence to break this illusion was probably not going to work. He could not help but think of the words in front of the gate. Cutting off the 7 emotions, cutting off the 6 desires, a bunch of nonsense. The 7 emotions and 6 desires were originally human emotions. They were originally innate. Cutting off the 7 emotions and 6 desires was actually going against the laws of heaven. It was actually a crooked path. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of understanding. He knew that the 7 emotions and 6 desires were not forced. It should be more a natural thing. Thinking of this, Zhuowen no longer used his spiritual power to destroy the illusion in front of him. Instead, he sat quietly on the spot, narrowed his eyes, and began to cultivate the power of his soul, putting all his attention on cultivation. More and more snow-white bodies took the initiative to lean on Zhuowen's body, and the surrounding air was filled with a seductive fragrance. Zhuowen was as motionless as a mountain. He sat in place, and the spiritual power between his eyebrows surged, emitting a faint light. After an unknown amount of time, the surrounding sounds of beautiful women singing and dancing disappeared. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. What appeared in his eyes was no longer a world of debauchery, but a desolate graveyard. This graveyard was very large, and there were many tombs around it. Each of the tombs had a lush green willow, the wisp hovering above them. In this dark night, it was like a street lamp leading to the kingdom of death. In the cold wind, there was the unpleasant sound of ravens, the howling of hungry wolves in the distance, and the whistling of the wind in the surroundings. When these sounds gathered together, it actually gave people a hair-raising feeling. Puff, puff. Suddenly, there was the sound of soil breaking out of the surrounding tombs, as if something was coming out of the soil. One after another, white bones crawled out of the graveyard. Some of the white bones still had pieces of flesh that had not completely rotted, and disgusting maggots crawled on them. The goal of these white bones was surprisingly the same, and they all crawled toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood in place, quietly watching the white bones crawl on his body and tear his flesh. The bone hands tore out bloody flesh from his body, and there was also a horrifying chewing sound. These white bones began to chew and swallow the flesh that was torn off. In a short while, Zhuowen's flesh had long been torn off, leaving only a bloody skeleton. But at the glabella of this bloody skeleton, the divine soul light was still flickering and had not been extinguished. Zhuowen stood in place silently for a long time. No idea when the surrounding illusionary realm changed again, and he was completely unscathed. There was no sign of his flesh being torn off at all. Just like this, Zhuowen continuously reincarnated in one illusionary realm after another. The only thing he did was to continuously temper his divine soul while reincarnating in the illusionary realms. One had to admit that these illusionary realms were all very realistic. Between the reincarnations of illusionary realms and illusionary realms, Zhuowen sensed a certain divine soul law that he had never felt before. He was finding out this law and continuously tempering his divine soul. And what made him pleasantly surprised was that his divine soul was indeed steadily becoming stronger. Originally, his divine soul had just broken through to the heaven-crushing third transformation and was merely at the initial stage of the third transformation. But now his divine soul had transformed again and actually reached the middle stage of the third transformation. One had to admit that the benefits of the illusionary realms to him were indeed hard to imagine. After who knew how long, Zhuowen suddenly opened both eyes, only to see that the illusionary realm scene before his eyes already completely disappeared. What appeared before his eyes was a stretch of ruins and wasteland. It was precisely the scene that he saw inside the door when he was outside the door previously. His gaze suddenly converged on not far ahead, inside a dilapidated divine temple. He saw the figure of a woman inside. The woman was lying on the steps of the divine temple, not moving at all. Zhuowen came to the woman's side and turned her over, his eyes revealing a look of excitement. Chapter 3649. Puchi. Moyan Wushang, who was in Zhuan's arms, suddenly opened her eyes. She held a sharp dagger in her right hand and stabbed it into Zhuan's heart. Zhuan dropped Moyan Wushang and took a few steps back. He looked at the dagger in his chest in disbelief. Wushang, Zhuan pulled out the dagger and looked at Moyan Wushang in confusion. Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes were filled with coldness. She looked at Zhuan as if she was looking at a stranger. At the same time, Zhuan found that the dagger was coated with poison. The poison was extremely strong. It spread from his heart to all the meridians in his body. Under the poison, his whole body was paralyzed, and he began to lose feeling in his muscles. Zhuan sat cross-legged on the ground and began to use the primordial chant. Only then could he resist the poison's corrosion. "Brother Zhuai, how could I do this to you?" Suddenly, Moyan Wushang covered her mouth with both hands. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief and guilt. As he spoke, Moyan Wushang stepped forward to help Zhuan up. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at Moyan Wushang. He stopped her and said, "Wushang, don't come over. I need to relieve myself." Moyan Wushang did not stop. She said with a worried face, "Brother Zhua, how can this be? Your injuries are very serious, and I accidentally injured you. I will take responsibility for you." Moyan Wushang came to Zhuan's side and reached out to help him up. But the moment she touched Zhuan, her beautiful face changed. Zhuan suddenly blasted out a palm towards Moyan Wushang's forehead. Moyan Wushang reacted quickly. She tilted her head and dodged the palm. But the palm was too fast. Although Moyan Wushang dodged the attack, it still landed on her left shoulder. Moyan Wushang's left shoulder was destroyed. She groaned and stepped back. Her beautiful eyes looked coldly at Zhuan. Clang! At Moyan Wushang's feet, a dagger fell. This dagger wasn't taken from Zhuan. It was the second dagger that Moyan of Wushang had taken out. "Who are you?" Zhuan asked coldly as he looked at Moyan of War in front of him. His current situation was very bad. The poison on the dagger was stronger than he had expected. Even he could barely hold on, and it was extremely strenuous. The reason why he suspected Moyan Wushang was because when the dagger pierced his heart, there was only coldness in her beautiful eyes. There was no trace of guilt. It was only when she discovered that he was actually able to resist the poison that her eyes revealed concern and guilt. Although this change in expression was very short, it was caught by Zhuan. Therefore, he was certain that the woman in front of him was not Moyan Wushang. "It's me. I'm Wushang. Big brother Zhua, you're so fierce, I'm a little scared." Moyan of Wushang's beautiful eyes revealed a pitiful look. She gradually approached Zhuan, her delicate body trembling. Zhuan took out the detoxification pill and the healing pill from the spiritual ring and swallowed them all. Although he didn't know what kind of poison was in his body, although the detoxification pill couldn't completely cure it, it could greatly reduce the toxicity. What a joke. I don't care who you are. As long as you're not Wushang, I really don't care. After Zhuan's body was slightly better, he took a deep breath and revealed a self-mocking smile. Moyan of Wushang didn't understand. She once again walked towards Zhuan. The grievance on her face was even more intense. She apologized to Zhuan, stating that she didn't do it on purpose. Hongmeng, floating blade. Zhuan sneered. His hands formed a seal, and a purple blade swept out from the void. Its direction was unpredictable, and finally, it cut into Moyan of Wushang's back. Moyan of Wushang screamed. Immediately, her body began to fade and finally disappeared in front of his eyes. Still an illusion? Seeing Moyan of Wushang disappear in front of him, Zhuan's pupils shrank. He originally thought that he had broken all the illusions in this place. He didn't expect that the Moyan of Wushang that appeared was also an illusion. Moreover, this illusion was extremely realistic. He was really injured, and the injury was real. It seems that I was careless. This place is probably an illusion. As time passes, the illusion here will become more and more realistic. Zhuan's gaze was dignified. He knew that he had underestimated this place. His guess was right. The illusions were not over yet, and the following illusions would cause substantial damage. In other words, if you were injured in the illusion, your body in reality would also suffer the same injury. If you were careless and died in the illusion, you would really die. However, the real illusions didn't appear in waves, but intermittently. When you broke through an illusion, the next illusion might appear a few days later. It might even be half a month, or even longer before the next illusion appeared. Zhuowen walked on this land of illusion. He didn't know where the end was. He only knew that he had to keep moving forward. Although in the process of breaking the illusion, his divine soul was indeed constantly improving in an invisible way. However, as time passed, Zhuowen gradually became numb. He even began to lose track of time. He couldn't remember how long he had been walking on this land of illusion. 1 year, 2 years, even 10 years, he couldn't remember. He only knew that he had been walking on this land for a long time. No, I can't waste too much time here. On the vast and desolate land, Zhuowen stopped in his tracks. His numb gaze suddenly sharpened. The invasion of the Golden Universe Starry Sky Army was not far away. Although he had made full preparations, he still felt that something was wrong. He had a trump card, but Gongji Lu and NIC were not ordinary people. Did they not have a trump card as well? Moreover, since Zhuowen's main body entered the bead world, he found that the connection between him and his clone was completely cut off. After all, divine soul power could only be exerted by the main body. Now that the connection between the main body and his clone was cut off, the clone's divine soul power was actually very weak. Except for the 3 divine soul sword intents left by the main body, the clone's divine soul was only equivalent to a 5th blight powerhouse. That's... Suddenly, Zhuowen stopped. He found that in the distance in front of the wasteland, he vaguely saw a pavilion in the air. Below the pavilion in the air, there was an oasis that was completely different from the wasteland. Let's go and take a look. Chapter 3650. In the depths of the moat, human and outsider armies were patrolling the border as usual. Suddenly, a human cultivator discovered that a giant white vortex had appeared hundreds of millions of kilometers away from the border. The vortex flashed with dazzling light, spreading out in all directions like sunlight. Then, the human cultivator discovered that one army after another was emerging from the vortex. That's the army of Golden Cosmos? The human cultivator's cry of surprise alerted the other patrolling cultivators. They also looked into the primal chaos starry sky outside. Sure enough, they saw the white vortex and the armies walking out of it. These armies were neither human nor outsider. Instead, they were formed purely from metal and machinery. Quick, we have to report this to the Black King and Lord Ninefox. The first human cultivator to discover the army realized the severity of the situation and immediately took out a jade talisman to send an urgent message to the Black King. Soon, the Black King and Forefather Nine-Tailed arrived. When they saw the armies emerging from the white vortex in the distance, their expressions turned extremely grave. They knew that what was to come had finally arrived. We've been guarding this place for 10 years. The army of Golden Cosmos has arrived, just as Lord Zhuo predicted. The Black King said with a complicated look in his eyes. Golden Cosmos is far more powerful than our galactic universe. We have to spread the news and gather all the cultivators in the cosmos. We have to stop Golden Cosmos attack. Forefather Nine-Tailed solemnly said. The Black King nodded and sent the news to Taoist 3 Purities, instructing him to spread the news. Forefather Nine-Tailed didn't want to be outdone and sent the news to the Wilderness Street as well. Soon, news of the arrival of Golden Cosmos army spread throughout the galactic universe. Within the palace of 3 Purities, the azure-robed Taoist slowly put away his jade talisman as he sat cross-legged in front of the stone statue. Lian Meng, get ready. The army of 3 Purities is to move out and head into the depths of the moat. Taoist 3 Purities said to Lian Meng, who had a respectful look in her eyes. Lian Meng had a grave look on her face. She knew very well what the main goal of Three Purities' army was. For Three Purities to mobilize this army meant that the army of Golden Cosmos had arrived. After Lian Meng left, Three Purities revealed a helpless look. I didn't think that the army of Golden Cosmos would arrive so quickly. He sighed softly and put away the jade talisman in his hand. Zhuowen had given him the jade talisman as a reward for the Stone of Darkness. It was something that Three Purities yearned for even in his dreams. This was the heaven-crushing technique, the extreme purple spirit technique. Ever since the Three Pure Ones received the purple extreme spiritual technique, they had been in seclusion all year round in order to cultivate this technique and break through to the heaven-crushing stage. He had planned to cultivate in seclusion until the heaven-crushing stage. Unfortunately, the golden corner starry sky had come at this time. This made the Three Pure Ones very unhappy. Under of Golden Cosmos. In addition, Dongwang Tai of the Demon Saint Palace also received the news immediately. He had been preparing for the war all these years. Therefore, when he received the news, the first thing he did was to bring out the demon race army that he had reorganized over the years. He personally led the army to the Heavenly Moat. Many cultivators from Xianmi Heavenly Domain and Void Heavenly Domain. They formed their own teams and set off toward Heaven's Moat. Xianmi Heavenly Region. In an unremarkable mountain valley, there was the encampment of the number one force in Xianmi Heavenly Region, the Long family. Daddy, I want a hug. In the courtyard of Ryuka's main building, a 10-year-old boy who was as delicate as a porcelain doll was running toward a man in front of him excitedly. Then, he threw himself into the man's arms. In addition to the man, there was also a beautiful woman in the courtyard. The woman looked at the man and the boy with eyes full of tenderness and joy. This family of three was Zhuowen, Mu Qinxue, and their child, Zhuojun. Junin, you're already 10 years old. You're already a little adult. Do you still need Daddy to carry you? Zhuowen picked up Zhuojun and then pinched his chubby cheeks. Oomph. Daddy is so bad. Even if I'm 20 years old, I'm still your son. Isn't it natural for a son to let Daddy carry him? Zhuojun used his small hands to block Zhuowen's hands and pouted his lips. Zhuowen shook his head helplessly. His son's personality was not like his and Mu Qinxue's at all. He had been mischievous since he was young and had a lot of ideas. However, Zhuojun's talent made Zhuowen think highly of him. Zhuojun was a sage immortal when he was born. When he was 5 years old, Zhuojun broke through the sage immortal stage and reached the soul formation stage. When he was 8 years old, he broke through to the true immortal stage. When he was 10 years old, he was already at the peak of the true immortal stage. He was definitely the youngest true immortal that Zhuowen had ever seen. One had to know that in the entire universe, no matter how talented a genius was, it would take at least a few hundred years to reach the soul formation stage. However, Zhuojun only used 10 years, and he did not cultivate at all to break through easily. Even Zhuowen couldn't help but admire this cultivation speed. When he was 10 years old, he basically didn't have any cultivation. He just had a strong physical body. Moreover, looking at Zhuojun's current aura, Zhuowen knew that he would be able to break through the shackles of the true immortal stage and enter the virtual sky world when he was 11 years old. He even suspected that with Zhuojun's terrifying talent, he would be able to smoothly reach the Tao before he reached adulthood. This was very likely. Suddenly, there was a knock on the courtyard's door. Zhuowen handed Zhuojun to Mu Qinxue and opened the door. Outside the door, Green Hat was standing respectfully. Master, something bad has happened. The Black King sent news that the Golden Corner Starry Skies army has arrived near the border. Green Hat said with a serious look. What? So fast? Zhuowen's pupil shrank. Qinxue, I'll go to the reception hall with Green Hat to discuss some things. You take Junin back first. Zhuowen knew the situation was urgent, so he ordered Mu Qinxue and left the courtyard with Green Hat. He was now only a doppelganger in Ryuka. Ever since the main body entered the Merciless Pearl, The doppelganger could no longer sense the main body's aura. It couldn't even contact the main body. As for the main body, the doppelganger had never told anyone in the clan. He was afraid that if he told them, the clan would be worried. He planned to find a suitable opportunity to tell Mu Qinxue and the others. The only thing he could rejoice about now was that the doppelganger confirmed that the main body was still alive. The main body and the doppelganger were one, and the main body was the main body. If the main body died, the doppelganger wouldn't live for long either. In the past 10 years, although the doppelganger had lost contact with the main body, it was still alive and well, which meant that the main body was fine. On the way to the reception hall, Zhuan gathered many of Ryuka's important higher-ups. The Golden Corner Starry Sky's army had arrived, so he had to show up. After all, as the number one person in the Starry Sky, he had become the idol of many cultivators in the Starry Sky. If he didn't fight, it would affect the morale of the Starry Sky. "Mother, can I participate in this battle?" Zhuajun and watched Zhuan's back as he left. The mischievous look in his eyes had already disappeared. It was replaced with determination and sharpness. He had already heard about the Golden Corner Starry Sky matter from Mu Qinxue, so he knew what was going on. Chapter 36:51. In the reception hall of Ryuka, Zhuan sat in the main seat. There weren't many people in the hall, but most of them were the higher-ups of Ryuka, such as Green Hat, Purple Star-Lord, and Long Xiaotian. At this moment, everyone in the hall had a solemn expression. They had obviously heard about the arrival of the Golden Galaxy Army. When the Golden Galaxy Army has arrived outside the Wandering Galaxy. Now, all the cultivators in the galaxy are preparing for battle. We have also formed a team in Ryuka. Long Xiaotian was about to speak when Zhuan interrupted him. "Father, Ryuka is still in the development stage. There are too few strong cultivators. Ryuka will not participate in this battle," Zhuan said in a deep voice. Not participating in the battle?" Long Xiaotian was stunned. "Yes, Green Hat, Brother Purple Star, and I will go to Heaven's Moat. The rest will stay in Ryuka. As long as no Heaven Breaker cultivators invade, Ryuka is the safest place," Zhuan said. Everyone looked at each other and felt relieved. Zhuan was right. The valley where Ryuka was located had several Heaven Breaker Level 1 formations set up by Zhuan. It was impregnable, and ordinary cultivators would not be able to break through it. Zhuan gave Long Xiaotian some instructions and handed over the Ryuka formation flags to him. Then, he left Ryuka with Green Hat and Purple Star-Lord. Green Hat had a good life in Ryuka. Not only did he have a lot of resources to cultivate, but he also received the 7 Lives Qi Recovery Pill from Zhuan. His cultivation speed was extremely fast. 3 years ago, Green Hat had already entered the 5th Heaven's Blight. As for Purple Star-Lord, he had obtained the inheritance of the Immortal Bird. Before the 5th Heaven's Blight, he didn't have any bottlenecks. As long as he had enough resources, his cultivation speed was much faster than Green Hat's. Over the years, Purple Star-Lord's cultivation had broken through again and again, and he was now in the early 4th Heaven's Blight. The two of them were the strongest cultivators in Ryuka other than Zhuan. Therefore, Zhuan brought them with him in this battle. Outside the border of Heaven's Moat, the White Whirlpool was still there, and mechanical armies were being transported over. When the last army crossed over, all the soldiers faced the White Vortex and knelt on one knee. They shouted in unison, "God Lord and Great God Master." As God, a group of people walked out of the whirlpool. The person was the god of Golden Galaxy. A man and a woman were standing next to the Divine Lord. They were Gong Kilyu and Nic of the Nuwa clan. The Great God Master stood silently behind the three of them, looking down at them submissively. Other than that, there were 49 mechanical life forms of various shapes and sizes following closely behind the Grandmaster. The unique characteristic of these 49 mechanical life forms was that their auras were extremely powerful. Unexpectedly, the aura of each mechanical life form was not weaker than Green Hat, who had just broken through. A few of them were even close to the 3 pure ones. They were all in the 5th heaven's blight. These were the 49 divine protectors of Golden Cornerstarry Sky. They had once gone on expeditions in Golden Cornerstarry Sky, experienced hundreds of battles, and made countless outstanding contributions in battle. Every one of them was an exceptionally brilliant figure in the history of Golden Cornerstarry Sky. I didn't expect the large-scale teleportation formation to be completed in advance. This is all thanks to Lord Gongji and Lord Ni. The God Master looked at the distant galaxy. His eyes were filled with excitement, and he quickly bowed to Gongji, Liu, and Nic. Gongji, Liu, and Nic were not formation masters and had never set up a large formation before. However, they came from a high-tier realm like the 100 Domains and had seen countless high-tier formations there. They had only told the great God Master about the characteristics of the large-scale teleportation formation that they had seen before, and he had benefited greatly. It was this rare experience that allowed the large-scale teleportation formation to be completed in advance. Otherwise, the large-scale teleportation formation would have taken at least 50 years to complete. God Master, you're too polite. This should be due to you and the great God Master. I only helped a little. Gongji Liu said indifferently. And Nic, who was standing next to Gongji Liu, also said, God Master, after conquering Golden Galaxy, don't forget what we told you to do. The God Master quickly bowed. Lord Ni, don't worry. I've never dared to forget your orders. It's just that. Gongji Liu saw the God Master's worry and smiled. I know what you're worried about. The sudden appearance of the primordial chaos path probably means that a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse has just appeared in this galaxy. Gongji Liu revealed a mocking smile and continued. However, you don't have to worry. I'll help you kill that guy who just broke through the heaven-breaking realm. The God Master was stunned. Then, he saw Gongji Liu take out a golden scepter from his spirit ring. The scepter was golden in color. The only difference was that there was a black snake coiled around the top of the scepter. It was unknown what material the black snake was made of. When the God Master looked into the dark red eyes of the black snake, he felt his hair stand on end. It was as if he was really being stared at by the snake. And Nic's beautiful eyes changed slightly when she saw the scepter. She wanted to say something, but was stopped by Gongji Liu. God Master, this scepter is called the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter. Do you know what grade of divine artifact this scepter is? Gongji Liu gently stroked the black snake scepter and asked with a faint smile. The God Master, the great God Master, and the 49 divine guardians all broke out in cold sweat when they saw the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter. Their bodies trembled slightly. Although the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter didn't do anything, it had already affected them imperceptibly. From this, it could be seen that this scepter was extraordinary. This should be a heaven-breaking level 2 divine artifact. The God Master lowered his head, not daring to look into the black snake's scarlet eyes. It wasn't that he had never seen a divine artifact before. Back then, a heaven-breaking realm senior from the Golden Galaxy had returned to the Golden Galaxy to search for his descendants' bloodline. He had personally received that senior and had seen that senior's heaven-breaking divine artifact. However, that senior's divine artifact was only a heaven-breaking level 1 divine artifact. Although its aura was very powerful, it was far inferior to the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter in front of him. Haha, heaven-breaking level 2? Gongji Liu smiled coldly and couldn't help but shake his head. Could it be? The God Master realized something, and his pupils constricted. Yes, the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter is a heaven-breaking level 3 divine artifact. One has to know that even in the 100 domains, there aren't many heaven-breaking level 3 divine artifacts. I'll lend this Snake Shadow Divine Scepter to you temporarily. Don't disappoint me. As he spoke, Gongji Liu handed the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter to the God Master. The God Master's throat trembled as he subconsciously took the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter. His eyes were filled with an inexplicable expression. This is the token to use the Snake Shadow Divine Scepter. This divine artifact is too powerful. Your cultivation is too weak, so it's difficult for you to control it. With this token, you can use a portion of its power. Gongji Lu threw another token to the Godmaster. Thank you, Lord Gong. This lowly one really doesn't know what to say. The Godmaster reached out to take the token. His entire body was trembling. He was too excited to be able to use a heaven-breaking divine artifact in this life. Chapter 3652. Gongji Lu clasped his hands behind his back and said calmly, "Go. As long as you complete the mission I've given you, I'll fulfill my promise to you." The Divine Lord's body trembled when he heard this. His eyes were filled with excitement. "Thank you, Lord Gong. This lowly one definitely won't disappoint you. Just wait for my good news, Lord Gong." With that, the Divine Lord summoned an enormous flying ship. He led the Grand Divine Master, the 49 Divine Protectors, and a large army into the ship, then piloted it and flew towards the distant spiral galaxy. When Zhuan arrived at the depths of Heaven's Moat with Green Hat and Star Monarch Crepe Myrtle, they found that an extremely large number of cultivators had already gathered there. The cultivators of the Three Purities Palace, Chaos Street, Monster Saint Palace, and the other celestial realms had all gathered there. Zhuan, on the other hand, was considered to be the last batch to arrive. "Greetings, Lord Zhua." Taoist Three Purities hurriedly led the others forward and bowed respectfully to Zhuan. Ever since he'd witnessed Zhuan's great power, as well as the fact that Zhuan could casually give him a heaven-shattering technique like the extreme purple spiritual art, he'd been filled with resentment. The Three Pure One's resentment toward Zhua, one had long since turned into reverence. He knew that the gap between him and Zhuan was very large, so he no longer had any thoughts of competing with Zhuan. Wouldn't that be suicide? Zhuan nodded and said solemnly, "The battle is imminent. Everyone, don't slack off. Take these as well." With that, Zhuan waved his sleeve. Instantly, numerous talismans glowing with a dim light fell like rain into the hands of the cultivators present. "These are..." Three Purities flipped his hand over and looked at the talismans in his palm, somewhat puzzled. "These are teleportation talismans I made myself. They can teleport you to anywhere several billion kilometers away. If the battle turns against us, crush these talismans and flee the battlefield," Zhuan said solemnly. Everyone's hearts sank. In their hearts, Zhuan was truly the strongest person beneath the stars. However, from Zhuan's actions, they could see that even Zhuan was not optimistic about this battle. Was the golden starry sky really that strong? The Three Pure Ones, the Black King, and the other higher-ups calmly put away their teleportation talismans. Unlike other ordinary cultivators, they already had an understanding of the strength of Golden Corner Starry Sky and knew that the gap between the two starry skies was not small. As far as they knew, there were 51 Fifth Blight powerhouses in Golden Corner Starry Sky. This number was dozens of times that of Wandering Starry Sky. The disparity was too obvious. Zhuan's gaze was extremely solemn. Right now, his main combat power was mainly his original body. Even though the clone possessed the main body's trump card and Heaven Breaker Divine Tool, it was still far inferior to the main body. After all, the main body's divine sense was far too powerful. This was something that the clone couldn't compare to. The Golden Corner Starry Skies army is here. They are all in that huge spaceship. Suddenly, a commotion came from the front. Many cultivators cried out in surprise. Zhuan looked over. Indeed, in the distance of the chaotic starry sky, a huge metal spaceship was flying towards them. The deck area of this metal spaceship was very large. On the deck stood an army of mechanical life forms. He noticed that at the bow of the ship, there was a majestic voice standing quietly. It was a humanoid mechanical life form. Its appearance was that of a middle-aged man, but its entire body exuded a metallic color. It looked like a robot. The aura of this middle-aged humanoid mechanical life form was extremely vast. Even Zhuan felt a trace of pressure. Zhuan knew that this person should be the divine master of Golden Corner Starry Sky. He had already learned about it when he was with Zhou Yan. At the same time, he also noticed that not far behind the spaceship, where the white vortex had disappeared, there was still a divine ship there. This divine ship was far smaller than the spaceship of the Golden Corner Starry Skies army, but it was much more exquisite. Zhuan was no stranger to this divine ship. It was the divine ship of Gongji Lu in NIC. He could even see two figures standing quietly on the deck of the divine ship. Looks like I can't be careless. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He secretly took out array flags from the great world and secretly set them up around him. When his original body was still in Ryuka, he had spent a large part of his time deducing all kinds of array formations. Although the level of his array formation did not increase significantly, because of this, Zhuan had a deeper understanding of the heaven-breaking Level 1 array formation. The heaven-breaking Level 1 array that he had set up was extremely powerful. It was even more powerful than an ordinary heaven-breaking Level 1 array. There are also more types of array formations. At this moment, the array flags that the doppelganger had taken out were all large arrays that his original body had set up in Ryuka. There were 3 different types of killing arrays. After he secretly placed the array flags in a specific location, he used his divine consciousness to send a message to all the cultivators present. They were to wait for his command to teleport. Everyone trusted Zhuan and did not have any objections. After a while, the spaceship in the distance had reached the border of the natural moat. Bam! However, when the spaceship landed at the border, a strong array formation ripple spread out and blocked the spaceship's forward momentum. Divine Master, this is a heaven-breaking Level 1 defensive array. No, it's much weaker than an ordinary heaven-breaking Level 1 defensive array. It's barely heaven-breaking Level 1. The Grand Divine Master standing next to the Divine Master looked at the array formation that had countless array formation ripples in front of him and revealed a look of interest. Ever since Gongji Lu described all the arrays that he had seen in the 100 Outer Territories to the Grand Divine Master, the Grand Divine Master's array formation skills had not improved by much, but his knowledge had increased by a lot. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that the defensive array in front of him was barely heaven-breaking Level 1. Oh, there are actually people in this galaxy who can set up such a large array? The Divine Master narrowed his eyes and revealed a trace of surprise. In his opinion, whether it was a heaven-breaking cultivator or a heaven-breaking formation Divine Master, such existences could only exist in the 100 Outer Territories. It was impossible for them to exist in the lower realm. The Grand Divine Master was already a genius. He was the #1 array formation master in the Golden Corner Galaxy for countless years. However, the Grand Divine Master's level ultimately stopped at the peak of the half-step heaven-breaking level. He could not set up a large array that surpassed his own level. However, he was now at the border of the galaxy and had seen a large array that surpassed the lower realm. Although this large array was simply full of loopholes in the eyes of the mighty figures in the 100 Outer Territories, it was already a kind of miracle in the lower realm. This galaxy is not simple. Someone's array formation skills must have reached the heaven-breaking level. That's why they can set up such a large array. Chapter 3653. Divine Master, you're right. With the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, not to mention this simple and crude great formation, even if a heaven-breaking realm elite appeared in this starry sky recently, you can easily destroy that guy. The great God Master laughed loudly. The Divine Lord curled his lips, and his eyes were filled with pride. Gongji Lu had demonstrated the power of the Snake Shadow Divine Staff to him, and he knew how terrifying it was. Even if he could only unleash a portion of the staff's power, it was enough to make him invincible in the lower realm. The guy who had just broken through the heaven-breaking realm was nothing in front of the Snake Shadow Divine Staff. He really didn't take him seriously. Divine Master, please destroy this formation. The Grand Divine Master knelt on one knee. Then the 49 divine protectors and the mechanical beings on the deck all knelt on the ground and shouted in unison. The divine master nodded, took out the snake's shadow divine staff, and twisted it gently. A dazzling golden light burst out from the surface of the divine staff, and the golden light intertwined to form a giant python that shot out and charged toward the formation at the edge of the natural moat. Boom! Inside the formation, under the shocked gazes of many cultivators, the indestructible defensive formation shook violently. Then, it only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it was destroyed. They all knew that this defensive formation was personally set up by Zhuowen, and it was said that it could barely reach the heaven-breaking stage. Originally, this level of formation would have no problem defending the Golden Universe Army for a period of time. But now, wasn't a little too fast? That's a heaven-breaking divine artifact. I really didn't expect that the Divine Master of Golden Universe would have such a divine artifact. This is really unexpected. The Black King's face was solemn, and his eyes were full of fear. Although Sanqing's face was gloomy, he wasn't particularly worried. He smiled faintly and said, Master Zhuo also has a divine artifact. With Master Zhuo's strength, it won't be difficult for him to deal with this divine master. The Black King and the other Patriarch-level elites also nodded. They had all seen Zhuowen's strength on Mount Sanqing. Even though the Divine Master of Golden Universe Star had indeed been very strong, they already had blind confidence in Zhuowen. Zhuowen remained silent, but his heart slowly sank. The 3 pure ones were not clear about the aura of the heaven-breaking divine artifact, but he was well aware of the principles behind it. When Godlord Golden Corner took out the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, he knew something was wrong. This was because he could sense an aura from the Snake Shadow Divine Staff that was even more powerful than the 9 Tribulations Divine Sword. He knew that this Snake Shadow Divine Staff was definitely a heaven-breaking divine weapon of a higher grade than the 9 Tribulations Divine Sword. At the very least, it was a heaven-breaking divine artifact that was above heaven-breaking Stage 3. After the formation was destroyed, Godlord Golden Corner led the Great God Master and 49 God Protectors out of the spaceship and slowly stepped into the circling starboarder. Behind God, Lord Golden Corner, and the others, soldiers swarmed forward in an orderly fashion. Of course, Godlord Golden Corner had brought too many troops, so only 2/3 of the troops had followed them in. The rest of the troops were still on the spaceship. Divine Lord Golden Corner was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he looked at the many cultivators on Zhuowen's side and said faintly, Everyone in the wandering galaxy, I am the Divine Lord of Golden Corner Galaxy. Seeing you all mustering such a large force, you should also know the purpose of this Lord's arrival. I know that a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse appeared in your wandering galaxy some time ago. However, I can clearly tell you all that even a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse won't be a match for one of my moves. I, Godlord Golden Corner, am not an unreasonable person. As long as you all surrender to our Golden Corner Galaxy and give up a large area of the wandering galaxy to our Golden Corner Galaxy, I cannot make a move and will even bestow a small part of the place for you all to live in. Godlord Golden Corner's voice was not loud, but it resounded clearly in everyone's ears. Zhuowen, 3 pure ones, and the others all revealed puzzled looks. This God Lord Golden Corner actually said that a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse appeared in their wandering galaxy. But how was this possible? Their wandering galaxy's strongest powerhouse was Zhuowen. However, although Zhuowen's strength was strong, his cultivation had yet to break through the heavens. Zhuowen thought of the primordial chaos path. He had once heard Su Yuan say that the primordial chaos path's appearance was mostly due to the symbol of the first heaven-breaking realm appearing in the lower realm's starry skies. Back then, he accidentally opened up the primordial chaos path. The commotion was not small. Hence, it was seen by Gong Ji Lu and the others, and that was why they had such a conjecture. What does your Golden Corner Galaxy count for? Also daring to invade our wandering galaxy. You, Godlord Golden Corner, what right do you have to be so pretentious? With our Lord Zhuo around, you're simply trash. Who gave you the confidence to make us surrender? Right. Our Lord Zhuo is invincible. God Lord Golden Corner's voice had just faded when it aroused public anger. The cultivators of the wandering galaxy could not resist retorting. God Lord Golden Corner's gaze was calm, not caring about others rebuking, but said indifferently, Lord Zhuo, looks like you all hold this Lord Zhuo in high esteem. Since he's really so strong, then have that so-called Lord Zhuo come out and exchange moves with me. I wonder if he can take one move from me. The people of the wandering galaxy all quieted down, involuntarily turning their gazes to the rear, Zhuon, who was with the three pure ones, Black King, and the others. Their gazes were filled with fanaticism. Looks like you're the Lord Zhuo they're talking about. God Lord Golden Corner's gaze followed everyone's gazes, landing on Zhuon at the rear, his expression strange. He originally thought that the guy whom the people of the wandering galaxy held in such high esteem should be the heaven-breaking realm elite who had just appeared. But what disappointed him was that although this Lord Zhuo's aura was not weak, he was merely around the late-stage fifth blight. The gap with the heaven-breaking realm was really too great. Such trash could also be held in such high esteem in the wandering galaxy. Looks like he still overestimated the battle prowess of this wandering galaxy. The so-called Lord Zhuo you all speak of is too weak. I want to find the strongest in your galaxy. Don't just pick some trash for me. God Lord Golden Corner said somewhat impatiently. The moment these words came out, the people of the wandering galaxy were furious. The one you want to find is our wandering galaxy's first heaven-breaking realm elite, right? Zhuon suddenly spoke. The surrounding clamor immediately became much quieter. God Lord Golden Corner also finally sized up Zhuon properly because of this. Looks like you know some things. What you said is right. I'm indeed looking for that guy right now. Your wandering galaxy is too weak. Even if a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse appear by chance, so what? In front of me, that's also a lamb-like existence waiting to be slaughtered. God Lord Golden Corner said indifferently. God Lord Golden Corner's words pulled everyone's wrath again. But Zhuon was very calm. He said coolly, it's really a coincidence. That person is precisely my master. If you want to find my master, that will have to depend on your ability. Pass through me first. The three purities, Black King, and the rest were all stunned, their gazes revealing puzzlement. They had never heard before that Zhuon still had a master. However, looking at Zhuon's serious appearance, they could not help somewhat believing. The time of Zhuon's rise was too fast until it made them all feel that it was unrealistic. Actually, regarding Zhuon's rise, the three purities, they all also had some conjectures. Chapter 36:54. Three pure ones had even deeper experience. He had obtained a heaven-breaking grade cultivation method, like the purple extreme spirit art from Zhuon. At that time, he still did not understand how Zhuon, a being from the lower realm, could have a heaven-breaking grade cultivation method and even a heaven-breaking grade divine tool. Now, he finally figured it out. Looks like the master behind Lord Zhuo is definitely an expert. Most likely, even in the heaven-breaking realm, he's also a rather powerful existence. Three pure ones thought, lost in thought. Naturally, Zhuon didn't know that his casual words would cause many people to fantasize. He only wanted to hide his own secret. If others knew that he could open the primordial chaos path before breaking heaven, wouldn't this be very easy for others to suspect that he had a great secret? And Golden Corner God Lord insisted on finding that so-called heaven-breaking realm expert. Then Zhuon naturally also planned to go with the flow and make up this story. Your master? Golden Corner God Lord sized up Zhuon and suddenly laughed loudly and said, You want to test my methods for your master? But I have to remind you, with a piece of trash like you, I think you can't even take half a move from me, and you still want to seek your own death? Zhuon said somewhat impatiently. Aren't you annoying, talking a lot of nonsense? I haven't seen you have any real ability until now, but you're quite glib with your mouth. Could it be that you only know how to brag there? Golden Corner God, Lord's expression was gloomy. Was this brat in front of him tired of living, actually daring to speak to him like this? Since this boy is that heaven-breaking realm cultivator's disciple, then I'll kill this boy on the spot right now, and should be able to force that guy out. Thinking here, Golden Corner God, Lord's eyes were filled with killing intent. The only thing he was wary of now was that heaven-breaking realm cultivator who had just appeared in the spiraling starry sky. If they met force with force, he had a certain certainty of heavily injuring or even killing the heaven-breaking realm cultivator using the snake shadow divine staff. What he was most afraid of was that heaven-breaking realm cultivator not daring to show himself. And then when his army entered the depths of the spiraling starry sky to fight, if that guy suddenly came out and attacked their army, it would definitely cause a huge impact to their army. After all, God Lord Golden Corner had yet to break through the heavens. He relied on the snake shadow divine staff to obtain such great power. And besides strength, breaking heaven realm cultivators' movement techniques and methods were much more brilliant than his. If that fellow did not choose to clash head-on, Golden Corner Divine Lord would also find it difficult to deal with a genuine heaven-breaking realm cultivator. Moreover, if a heaven-breaking realm cultivator resorted to guerrilla warfare, it would simply be a disaster for their Golden Corner Starry Sky army. It was precisely in order to smoothly take down spiraling Starry Sky that Divine Lord Golden Corner wanted to provoke that heaven-breaking realm cultivator at the first possible moment, and it would be best if he could kill him. Gradually, the armies of the circling Starry Sky and the Golden Corner Starry Sky began to lean towards the edge, leaving a huge empty space in the middle. Zhuowen and God Lord Golden Corner stood at opposite ends of the empty space, gazing at each other from afar. Bastard son, you really have guts. You know that I have a heaven breaker divine artifact, yet you still dare to fight me. I really don't know where your courage comes from. God Lord Golden Corner chuckled coldly. I should be the one saying that. You're clearly at death's door, yet you still want to provoke me. Are you tired of living? Zhuowen said indifferently. Oomph. Your eloquence isn't bad, but I want to see how many moves you can take from me. God Lord Golden Corner did not waste any more words. He stomped his right foot, and his entire person swept over like a bolt of lightning, appearing in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye. The snake shadow divine staff floated around God Lord Golden Corner, but he did not use it to attack. Instead, he let it revolve around his body, forming a defense. In his view, dealing with a mere late-stage fifth blight guy, there was no need to use the snake shadow divine staff at all. God Lord Golden Corner's right hand formed a palm and blasted out across space. A blood-colored light appeared in the center of his palm. This blood-colored light intertwined together, spewing out a blazing blood-colored shock wave, instantly enveloping Zhuowen's entire person. God Lord Golden Corner floated in midair, his arms crossed, his eyes full of mockery. Reckless guy, insisting on coming out to court death. Now you've tasted suffering. God Lord Golden Corner shook his head and sneered disdainfully. But very soon, God Lord Golden Corner realized that something was wrong. He abruptly turned around and discovered that Zhuowen had appeared not far behind him at some point, only to see 9 divine swords revolved around Zhuowen's body. Each divine sword emitted a resplendent light, suffusing with a terrifying aura. The instant God Lord Golden Corner noticed Zhuowen, the corners of Zhuowen's mouth revealed a cold smile. The 9 divine swords around him transformed into 9 streaks of sword light, instantly landing on God Lord Golden Corner's body. Bang! 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 Countless sparks exploded around God Lord Golden Corner. The attacks of the 9 Tribulations divine sword were all blocked by the snake shadow divine staff. But the 9 Tribulations divine sword was a heaven-piercing rank 2 divine artifact after all. Its power was extraordinary. The powerful thrust passed through the snake shadow divine staff's defensive circle with an invisible ripple of energy and slammed into God Lord Golden Corner's body. Poochie! God Lord Golden Corner gave a muffled groan and vomited a mouthful of blood, involuntarily retreating repeatedly. No wonder it's a heaven-piercing rank 3 divine artifact. Its defensive power is really strong. Zhuowen muttered to himself, but his movements were not slow at all. The sword finger of his right hand landed on his glabella and abruptly extracted one of the 3 divine soul sword essences that his original body had left in advance in the divine soul of his doppelganger. Whoosh! A terrifying sword essence swept across the starry sky. The surrounding cultivators who sensed this sword essence all felt a bone-piercing chill and fear. Zhuowen's right-hand sword finger suddenly drew back from his glabella. Instantly, a golden sword light flashed and disappeared. Clusters of green flames burned on the surface of the sword light. The sword light was extremely fast. As soon as it appeared, it blasted toward God, Lord Golden Corner. Boom! The moment this sword light came into contact with the snake shadow divine staff beside God, Lord Golden Corner, countless sword shadows exploded. At the same time, the terrifying green flames, like a fire dragon, instantly engulfed God, Lord Golden Corner's surroundings. Moreover, the range of the green flames grew fiercer and fiercer, rapidly spreading in all directions. A portion of the Golden Corner Starry Sky army that was relatively close had already been affected. Anyone who came into contact with the green flames was basically reduced to ashes within a few moments of struggling. Everyone, use the transportation talisman and leave this place quickly. Zhuowen's gaze was grave as he hurriedly transmitted a message to everyone present. The divine soul sword essence's power was truly terrifying. The green flames that spread had such a wide range, instantly enveloping thousands of kilometers and showing no signs of stopping. After receiving Zhuowen's message, the cultivators circling the starry sky all crushed the transportation talisman in their hands and turned into streaks of white light, disappearing from where they were. As for Zhuo, before he crushed the teleportation talisman, he quickly used 3 great divine abilities and blasted them to where God Lord Golden Corner was. Chapter 3655. Gongji Lu and Ni stood quietly on the deck of the divine ship and looked indifferently at the edge of the moat in the distance. They saw God Lord Golden Corner use the snake shadow divine staff and easily destroy the defensive array at the edge of the moat. Then, he led the army into the moat. Oh, I actually saw an acquaintance in the army traveling through the starry sky. Gongji Lu's gaze fell on the moat. He was startled at first, but then his lips curled into a cold smile. And IC was startled and asked in surprise, "Senior brother, who is the acquaintance you're talking about?" Gongji Lu pointed in a direction, and IC looked over and saw Zhuowen in the army. At this moment, Zhuowen had already walked out and was talking to God Lord Golden Corner. So it's this guy? He's not simple. Back then, he could actually dodge your sneak attack. Even among the 5th Blight cultivators, he's considered a top elite. And IC nodded in realization and then changed the topic. However, in front of God Lord Golden Corner, who has the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, his little bit of strength is no different from paper. Gongji Lu smiled faintly. This person is not worth mentioning. I'm mainly worried about the guy who opened the primordial path. Among the cultivators facing the Golden Corner Starry Sky army, I didn't sense any heaven-breaking realm cultivator's aura. Obviously, that guy didn't show up. And IC's pretty face also became slightly serious. In the starry sky, the only thing they were wary of was the heaven-breaking cultivator who had just opened the primordial path. They had absolute confidence in the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, but they were afraid that the heaven-breaking cultivator would engage in guerrilla warfare with the Golden Corner Starry Sky army. Then it would be very troublesome. If that heaven-breaking cultivator didn't fight God Lord Golden Corner head-on, it was obviously not very possible for God Lord Golden Corner to rely on the Snake Shadow Divine Staff to destroy that heaven-breaking cultivator. Huh. Senior brother, look at that guy. He actually dares to challenge God Lord Golden Corner and actually plans to fight him. Is he courting death? NIC suddenly asked with a strange expression. Gongji Lu also noticed the confrontation between Zhuowen and God, Lord Golden Corner, in the distance. He was startled at first. Then he shook his head and said, "Newborn calves are truly fearless. Back then, I thought that this guy came from the 100 Outer Realms, so I was a bit afraid of him. Now it seems like this kid is simply a native living being that's roaming the starry sky. However, he has fragmented godly power, so he should have a lot of secrets on him. After God, Lord Golden Corner, cripples this child, I will send him a message. There is no need to kill him. Just let him hand this child over to us." However, as Gongji Lve spoke, he suddenly discovered that something was amiss. That was because there was no movement from NIC. When he looked at NIC, he realized that she was petrified. She stood on the spot and stared blankly at the natural moat. Gongji Lu followed NIC's gaze and saw the battle between Zhuowen and Golden Corner Godlord. In the blink of an eye, Divine Lord Golden Corner was enveloped by terrifying sword intent. Soon after, countless blue flames spread out, affecting the surrounding Golden Corner Starry Sky army. Then, behind the blue flames, there was an even more terrifying explosion. Gongji Lve's face darkened. He could tell at a glance that the explosive energy came from the self-destruction of a large formation. Moreover, the self-destruction of this large formation was definitely a heaven-breaking level 1 killing formation, and there was more than one killing formation. At that moment, the border of the natural moat's depths had already turned into an exploding hell. Countless violent energies spread out, desperately releasing energy as if they wanted to destroy everything in their path. There are at least 3 heaven-breaking level 1 killing formations. Who did this? Could this be a backup plan of that heaven-breaking cultivator? NIC's pretty face was slightly pale, and her expression was very ugly. Gongji Lve frowned slightly. He thought of Zhuowen, who had fought with God, Lord Golden Corner. These 3 heaven-breaking level 1 killing formations had been set up by that guy. The short exchange of blows just now had truly shocked Gongji Lu. That was why he suspected that the self-detonation grand formation was secretly set up by Zhuowen. Senior brother, that God Lord Golden Corner couldn't have been killed by the explosion, right? NIC frowned as she looked at the scene of the explosion in the distance. She was a little worried. That won't be the case. The power of the Snake Shadow Divine Staff is more than that. Unless that God Lord Golden Corner is a good-for-nothing, how could he have been killed by the self-destruction of a heaven-breaking level 1 killing formation? Gongji Lve shook his head. As soon as Gongji Lve finished speaking, the terrifying explosion at the border of the natural moat in the distance suddenly swept out a huge snake shadow. The snake shadow circled around in the air, and the terrifying explosive energy that was spreading continuously dissipated into thin air. God Lord Golden Corner walked out in an extremely sorry state. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was so angry that he was almost trembling. In particular, he saw that the army that had entered the natural moat had almost been completely wiped out. Even the divine guardians who had followed him had suffered heavy casualties. Splat! The Grand Divine Master, standing beside God, Lord Golden Corner, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He knelt on the ground, and his face was extremely pale. "Thank you, God Lord, for saving us at the last moment." He didn't even care about Zhuowen's so-called master and was about to make his way to the depths of spiraling galaxy. As long as he saw any living being, he would slaughter them all. "God Lord Golden Corner, you'd better calm down." Suddenly, an indifferent voice sounded, causing the furious God Lord Golden Corner to regain some of his rationality. Gong Kilyu had steered the divine ship to the edge of the natural moat. Because he had not severed his cultivation, he did not dare to step into the range of the galaxy. "Lord Gong, this lowly one got off to a bad start. I have embarrassed myself in front of you." God Lord Golden Corner immediately knelt on one knee and repented. This is not your fault. Even I did not expect that Zhuowen to be so secretive. Not only does he have a heaven-breaking divine artifact, but he also has a heaven-breaking array. Gong Kill You shook his head, not blaming God Lord Golden Corner. God Lord Golden Corner finally came to his senses. He recalled Zhuowen's methods and could not help but break out in cold sweat. Chapter 36:56. You're wavering. God Lord Golden Corner? Gong Ji Lu glanced at God Lord Golden Corner. I wouldn't dare, but I'm a little worried. His so-called master is already so powerful. So wouldn't his master be? God Lord Golden Corner said worriedly. What are you afraid of with my snake shadow staff? A third-grade heaven-crushing divine artifact is enough to kill any living being in this part of the galaxy. You failed just now mainly because you were careless. If you had used the snake shadow staff to attack Zhuowen from the start, you wouldn't have been the one to lose. But Zhuowen, no matter how powerful his master is, he won't be able to surpass level 2 Heavenbreaker, so he won't be a threat to you. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Gong Ji Lu said sternly. God Lord Golden Corner felt Gong Ji Lu's sharp gaze and couldn't help but tremble. I know I was wrong. I'll lead the army and attack the interior of Galaxy Traveler. Gong Ji Lu shook his head and said coldly, Fool! 2/3 of the army you brought with you has been annihilated, and the Divine Masters and Divine Protectors are either dead or injured. Isn't it suicide to go there in such a state? What you should do next is to reorganize the army, then treat the injured. Once the army has recovered, then attack. Furthermore, your Golden Corner Galaxy army no longer has an absolute advantage over Galaxy Traveler. Your best strategy now is to slowly encroach on Galaxy Traveler's territory. You'll need to fight a prolonged battle. Once most of Galaxy Traveler's territory is in your pocket, you'll have won. God Lord Golden Corner slapped his forehead as if he had been enlightened. He hurriedly bowed to Gong Ji Lu and began to reorganize the army. Then, he began to use Galaxy Traveler's technology as a base to build a huge mechanical fortress within Galaxy Traveler's range. Meanwhile, the Divine Masters set up half-step Heaven Breaker formations around Galaxy Traveler's territory to prevent Galaxy Traveler's army from ambushing them. Outside the Heavenly Chasm, the army that was roaming the starry sky quietly floated in midair, while Zhuowen stood at the front of the army. He looked down at the depths of Galaxy Traveler's territory, and his expression became more and more solemn. He had left many surveillance arrays at the natural moat. Although many of them were damaged by the explosion, the surveillance arrays in the remote areas were still intact. Through the surveillance formation, he realized that the Golden Corner Starry Sky army that had entered the natural moat was almost completely annihilated. However, the God Masters, Great God Masters, and 7 to 8 Divine Guardians were still alive. Although he had destroyed many of the main forces of the Golden Cosmic Starry Sky, the current lineup of the Golden Cosmic Starry Sky was still stronger than Zhuowen's side. This was because he found that the weakest of the 7 or 8 Divine Law Protectors were at the mid-stage of the 5th Blight, and the strongest had reached the level of the 3 Pure Ones. However, he knew that the 7 Emotion Steel's level was definitely much higher than his 9 Tribulation Sword formation. At the very least, he still didn't know how to use the 7 Emotion Steel at the moment. The spike that was derived from the surface of the 7 Emotions Steel appeared in Zhuowen's mind. He knew that if he woke up a moment later, he would really be killed by the 7 Emotion Steel. It seemed that comprehending the 7 Emotion Steel was extremely risky. If he didn't wake up within the stipulated time, he would really be dead. What made Zhuowen even more speechless was that the 7 Emotion Steel didn't give him any hint at all. If he continued to stay in a mortal world of the 7 Emotion Steel and didn't wake up, he might not even know how he died. Let's enter the pavilion in the sky first. Juan shook his head and took a step forward, stepping into the Seven Colors Lake. The densely packed restrictions around the Seven Colors Lake rippled when they came into contact with Juan, but there were no signs of them attacking. Juan heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that it was all thanks to the Seven Emotion Steel. He stepped on the surface of the lake and soon arrived at the center of the lake.